Chapter 124. When Mayun saw Gahan barging into the room without thinking, she asked worriedly, "Is Master okay?" "It's okay, it's okay." Even if Gahan is crazy, Qingbin will still like Gahan. Although the synthetic meat did not taste very good, Qing Jian still tried his best to stuff 2 large pieces into his mouth. He picked up another piece with his hand and brought it to Wen Meiyan. He said in a childish voice, "Good girl, open your mouth." Wen Meiyun's face was full of doubt, but she still opened her mouth obediently. Master's orders could not be disobeyed, and Master Sword Lady's orders could not be disobeyed either. "You cooked very well. Qingbin is very happy. This piece of meat is for you." Inside the room, Gahan did not turn on the computer. Instead, he took out a pen and wrote on a piece of paper, calculating something. In the future, 1,000 years later, even in the era of technological explosion, paper was still a necessity in human life. There was nothing that could replace the pleasure of calculating and writing on paper. Just now, Qingpin said, "No, synthetic pork tastes bad, and natural pork tastes good. How can they be the same thing? And pork is pork in its name, so are they really the same pork?" These 2 sentences made Guhan suddenly understand. How can Essence Sword Pill and Essence Oral Solution be the same thing? Essence Sword Pill and Essence Oral Solution both have sword essence in their names, so are they really the same thing? That's right. Essence Sword Pill and Essence Oral Solution were 2 different things. If you looked at them as 2 different things, then everything became very clear. The Essence Sword Pill and Essence Oral Solution that Guhan obtained each took up half of the 2,000 quarks of Essence Oral Solution, which was 1,000 quarks. According to the 0.9% conversion rate, the Essence Sword Pill and Essence Oral Solution should each increase Guhan's sword essence by 9 quarks. Then, in reality, Gahan increased the sword essence by 1,009 quarks. Did he notice the problem? The actual 1,009 quark sword element was exactly the sum of 1,000 quarks and 9 quarks. In that case, Gahan could make a bold guess that among the 1,000 quarks of sword essence pills and 1,000 quarks of sword essence oral solution, one of the 1,000 quarks had been successfully converted into 9 quarks of sword essence, while the other 1,000 quarks had all been converted into 1,000 quarks of sword essence in reality. This was a very shocking discovery. Guhan could actually convert 100% of the sword essence obtained in the game into reality. No matter how talented a genius was, his conversion rate was only 2%. Moreover, it was much faster to obtain sword essences in the game than in reality. In the game, a sword wielder at the treasure sword level might be at the famed sword level or even the spiritual sword level. Even if it was an immortal sword tier, it would not be impossible. This was because the speed of obtaining sword essences in the game was far faster and safer than in real life. What did this mean? This meant that he only needed to lie in bed and use his brain, and he could grow faster than those sword wielder who had been fighting in reality for years or even decades. There was no danger to his life at all. Gahan could even surpass the speed of all geniuses and soar. It was not a myth to accumulate 10 million quarks of sword essence at the age of 30 and become an Emperor Sword level sword wielder. This meant that Gahan had opened a super cheat that accelerated his experience by 10 times. If Gahan spent a lot of money to buy all the sword essence pills in the game and bought a pill with 10 million quarks of sword essence in one go, did that mean that Gahan could become an Emperor Sword level sword wielder in just one day? Gahan found a shortcut to quickly become an Emperor Sword level sword wielder and realize his dream. This shortcut did not require any effort. He just needed to spend money. However, when Gahan calmed down and thought about it, he immediately rejected the possibility of spending money to buy sword essence. This was because the extra 1,000 quarks of sword essence was 100% from the sword essence oral solution, not the sword essence pill or the sword essence pill. Why was Gahan so sure? The reason was simple. Connecting it to the last time Gahan broke through 100 quarks of sword essence and became an ancient sword level sword wielder, everything became clear. At first, Gahan thought that it was because he synchronized the king of Ugogian sword and secretly obtained 10,000 quarks of sword essence. After a 0.9% conversion, he broke through to 110 quarks. Now that he thought about it, that was a big mistake. Out of the 110 quarks, only 1 quark came from a 0.9% conversion from the sword essence pill and the sword essence pill. The remaining 100 quarks all came from the bottle of sword essence oral solution, green, obtained from the Jinyuan Guardian Mansion instance dungeon. The bottle of sword essence oral solution had increased the sword essence value by exactly 100 quarks. What a pity. If I had left a bottle of the oral solution unconsumed, I would be able to verify my guess now. Gahan thought regretfully. Why did he drink all of it in one go and leave one bottle behind? Now that he drank it, he could test the sword essence value to see if it increased by the same amount in reality. The answer would be clear at a glance. Although he could not verify his guess, Gahan was almost certain that the 1,000 quarks of sword essence in reality came from the mysterious sword essence oral solution. There was no doubt about it. After understanding this, Gahan threw away the paper in his hand, turned on his computer, and started searching for information about the sword essence oral solution. After a few minutes, the sword essence oral solution, which was something that Gahan did not pay attention to, was organized in Gahan's mind. First of all, it was worth noting that the sword essence oral solution had a history of nearly 200 years since its first appearance in the game. During these 200 years, no less than 10 billion bottles of the sword essence oral solution had appeared in the game. More than 100 million players had consumed the sword essence oral solution. However, none of the players had ever been like Gahan, who could convert the sword essence in the sword essence oral solution 100% into reality. To other players, the sword essence oral solution, sword essence pill, and sword essence pill were no different. They were just a method to increase the sword essence in the game. The conversion rate was the same as the sword essence pill and sword essence pill. After all, hundreds of millions of players had consumed the sword essence oral solution at the same time. It was impossible for the Sword Council or the Council to erase the hidden information. Gahan had a vague guess that he must have some kind of special physique to be able to convert the sword essence brought by the sword essence oral solution 100%. However, Gahan did not know if he was the only player with such a physique. Even if there were people like him, the number of them was pitifully small. It might not exceed the number of fingers. Gahan even suspected that there was a special connection between his physique and the fact that his innate sword essence was only 9 quarks. After the age of 6, the innate sword essence stopped increasing. Gahan suspected that the source of this physique might be the mysterious patriarch of Jindy. There were too many secrets hidden in this. When Gahan thought about it, he trembled with excitement and fear. Gahan decided that he had to keep this secret a secret until he became an invincible Emperor sword wielder. Only then could he really pursue the answer to this secret. The second thing worth paying attention to was the source of the sword essence oral solution. The source of the sword essence oral solution was very special. Other than some special crusade missions, special instance dungeons, and the golden capsule in the capsule machine, which had a very small chance of obtaining it, there was only one way to obtain a large amount of the sword essence oral solution. That was to give it to the players as a reward for the 8 Cities Sword Conference that was held once every 10 years. The 8 Cities Sword Conference was a grand competition that was held once every 10 years. All players could sign up to participate in the 8 Cities Sword Conference. The winner would receive the supreme title of #1 in the world. They could wear this title on their head for a whole 10 years and enjoy the admiration of countless players. Players had to first sign up in the city they belonged to. For example, Gahan naturally had to sign up in Yuzhong City. After signing up, players would be assigned to various groups according to their level at the time of signing up, such as the Ancient Sword Group, the Treasured Sword Group, the Famous Sword Group, the Spiritual Sword Group, the Fairy Sword Group, and other competition groups. The strongest 8 people in each group would form the representative team of the respective city to participate in the final battle of the 8 Cities Sword Conference. They would fight for the title of #1 in the world, #1 in the Ancient Sword Group, Treasured Sword Group, Famous Sword Group, and other exciting titles. As long as one signed up to participate in the competition, they would receive Sword Element Oral Liquid as a reward, regardless of whether they won or lost. Of course, the winner would receive twice as much Sword Element Oral Liquid as the loser. Moreover, as the battle continued, the Sword Element Oral Liquid as a reward would become higher and higher. Gohan looked up the previous rewards of the 8 cities sword conference. The sword wielder who obtained the title of #1 in the world would receive 100 red bottles of Super Sword Element Oral Liquid. Each bottle would directly increase the Sword Element Oral Liquid by 10,000 Sword Element. As for the champion of each group, they would receive 1 red bottle, 2 red bottles, 5 red bottles, 10 red bottles, 20 red bottles, and so on and so forth. Seeing these rewards, Gohan was instantly burning with excitement. Gohan was now an Ancient Sword group. As long as he obtained the title of #1 in the Ancient Sword group, he would receive 2 red bottles of Sword Element Oral Liquid that contained 20,000 Sword Element. This meant that in the real world, Gohan could instantly obtain 20,000 quarks of Sword Element. One more step, and he would become a famous sword wielder in the real world. However, 20,000 Sword Element was not Gohan's goal. In Gohan's eyes, the 5 red bottles of Sword Element Oral Liquid from the title of #1 in the famous sword group was not something that was out of reach. As long as Gohan could break through 10,000 Sword Element in the game and become a famous sword wielder before the 8 cities sword conference began, it would be enough. Looking at the schedule of the 8 cities sword conference, it was a coincidence that the next 8 cities sword conference would be held this year. From today onward, there were 49 days left until the registration deadline for the 8 cities sword conference. There were 50 days left until the first battle of the first day of the 8 cities sword conference. Chapter 125. Gohan walked out of the room, feeling refreshed. Having figured out a lot of things, he seemed a little excited. This was very normal. Anyone who discovered that they had unlocked a super cheat would be so excited that their whole body would tremble and they wouldn't be able to sleep for the whole night. It was not easy for Gohan to only look excited, which was already a very difficult thing to do. Back in the living room, Qingpin had already finished the big pot of Dompa pork. However, the Dompa pork didn't seem to be able to satisfy Qingpin's appetite. She kept pestering Wen Meiyun and pulled down the chest area of her maid costume. Half of her breasts were clearly visible. Well done, Qingpin. Little sister Meiyun, this poor one's stomach is still very hungry. Can you go and buy some meat for this poor one? Even if it's synthetic meat, it's fine. The poor one begged Wen Meiyun pitifully. Wait, why did Qingpin call Wen Meiyun his little sister? In terms of age and body shape, it was just right for Qingpin to call Wen Meiyun mom. Lady Qingpin, I don't have any more money in my personal terminal. I can't buy any meat for you to eat. Wen Meiyun's hair was a mess, and her clothes were in a mess. Cough, cough. Qingpin, what are you doing? Hurry up and come down. Look at what you've done to Meiyun. Also, you should call Meiyun big sister, not little sister. Gohan smiled as he grabbed Qingpin from Wen Meiyun's body and pulled her into his arms. But Qingpin is older than Meiyun. Qingpin is already hundreds of thousands of years old. Qingpin spat out a few hundred words in a single breath. In order to be a big sister, Qingpin was willing to go all out. You're talking back. Gohan pinched Qingpin's mouth and then asked Wen Meiyun, who was tidying up her clothes, Meiyun, how much have you paid since you entered my house? About 1,000 yuan. Wen Meiyun lowered her head and said softly, Hey, take out your personal terminal. Gohan ordered. Oh. Wen Meiyun raised her right hand obediently. She knew that this meant that Gohan was transferring money to her personal terminal. Sure enough, Gohan also extended his right hand and touched Wen Meiyun's personal terminal. Go buy another 10 pounds of meat for Qingpin. Remember to buy natural, not synthetic. Natural. Wen Meiyun was a little surprised. Although the market price of natural pork wasn't as expensive as Chanel's 800 yuan per pound, it was still around 500 yuan. 10 pounds would be 5,000 yuan. Although Gohan didn't say it, Wen Meiyun could tell from some details that Gohan's agent should be very tight on money. The day before yesterday, he only had a little more than 100 yuan for vegetables, and he didn't even give it to her. Why would he be so generous and directly by 5,000 yuan of pork. This master couldn't be thinking about her remaining 200,000 yuan, right? When Maiden speculated anxiously. She carefully looked at the balance on her personal terminal, and then, with a red face, she quickly ran out of the house. Her master actually transferred 100,000 renminbi to her, and she actually suspected that her master was trying to cheat her of her money. She was really too petty. She felt so guilty. After watching Wen Meiyun leave the house, Gahan pinched Qingpin's nose. "All right, your meat is coming soon. Be happy." This is what Gahan should do. It's Gahan's responsibility to feed Qingpin and let Qingpin eat well and sleep well. Qingpin won't be happy. Although Qingpin said so, his face was full of joy. He wrapped his arms around Gahan's neck and kissed Gahan's lips lightly. "This is your reward, Stinky Gahan." Gahan touched his lips in disbelief. "My first kiss is gone just like that? This isn't my first kiss. It's just a kiss on the lips. Kids don't understand. This isn't my first kiss." Gahan comforted himself and grabbed the soft flesh on Qingpin's neck again. "Qingpin, can I trouble you to return the sword?" "What? Are you going to play with Qingpin's body again?" When Qingpin heard that Gahan wanted him to return the sword, he immediately blushed. Come to think of it, this was indeed a way to play with Qingpin's body. No, want. I just want to take back the sword essence in your body. The sword essence absorbed from the dimensional vortex is still in your stomach. Guhan said, enunciating each word in a heavy tone, "I just want to retrieve the sword essence in your body." After destroying the demonic beast yesterday, and Qingpin absorbing the sword essence from the dimensional vortex, Gahan had not transferred the sword essence from Qingpin's body. Now that he was home, Gahan finally remembered this and wanted to retrieve the sword essence. "That's right." Qingpin clapped his hands excitedly. Gahan, Qingpin remembers that the teacher taught Qingpin that the fastest way to transfer the sword essence is to mouth to mouth. "Let's give it a try." "No. Want. 3 black lines appeared on Gahan's forehead. When Li Xian was in class, wasn't Qingpin sleeping happily in his arms? How did she hear such a thing? Li Xian shouldn't have saved him yesterday. It would have been best if he died. "I'll count to 3. Qingpin, if you return the sword, I'll pull out your sword hilt." All right. Qingpin, return the sword." "Stupid Gahan, you're always playing with Qingpin." After leaving these words in a huff, Qingpin's body turned into starlight and dissipated bit by bit, turning back into Qingpin's sword in Gahan's hand. Gahan smiled helplessly and sat on the ground in a meditative posture. Then, he inserted Qingpin's sword into his collar and pressed the blade tightly against his chest. He closed his eyes and began to feel the sword mark in his purple palace. Inside Gahan's mysterious purple palace, a sword shadow that was similar in appearance to Qingpin's sword was suspended in the purple palace like a mosaic. This was the sword mark of Qingpin's sword. Every sword mark that was synchronized for the first time was blurry like this. Only after 9 deep sword marks could the sword mark change from mosaic form to a level that was exactly the same as Qingpin's sword in reality. The clearer the sword mark in the purple palace, the more powerful the sword lady would be and the more skills she would be able to master. Gahan gradually attached his consciousness to the sword mark in his purple palace and controlled the sword mark to slowly float out of his purple palace. It appeared outside his body and gradually approached Qingpin's sword that was pressed against his chest. If someone were to look at Gahan at this moment, they would see a glowing, sword-shaped light floating out from Gahan's chest. It slowly merged with Qingpin's sword, causing Qingpin's sword to emit a glowing light. "Gahan, is that you? Have you entered Qingpin's body?" After Gahan controlled the sword mark to merge with Qingpin's sword, he heard Qingpin's surprised voice. "Yes, I'm in your body now." Gahan answered. "Hee. Is Qingpin's body comfortable?" "Not really. It's so tight that it's hard to breathe." Gahan honestly answered what he felt. After entering Qingpin's body, Gahan's consciousness could feel a severe sense of oppression, as if there was a terrifying existence inside Qingpin's body. "Qingpin, inject the sword essence you obtained into my sword mark." "Oh." Qingpin responded unhappily. A few seconds later, a ball the size of a longan floated to the side of the sword marked Control by Gahan. This longan-sized ball of coal was all the sword essence Qingpin had obtained from the dimensional vortex. According to the information, if the sword essence mass perceived by the mind was the size of a longan, it meant that this ball of sword essence was about 50 quarks, which was similar to the upper limit of 50 quarks that the soul-grade Yuan Ko's dimensional vortex could provide. It seemed that this demonic beast was indeed a peak soul-grade Yuan Ko. Gahan thought silently. Suddenly, this ball of sword essence began to slowly disperse, gradually turning from a solid longan into a cloud. Then, this cloud slowly floated into the sword mark. This meant that the sword essence had officially begun to transfer. He didn't know if everyone had seen sand screening before. It was to sprinkle coarse sand with various small stones on a screen that looked like a window screen. The fine sand would leak through the screen, while the small stones would remain on the screen. At this moment, Gahan's sword mark seemed to be acting like a screen. The seemingly solid cloud of sword essence entered from one side of the sword mark and floated out from the other side. However, it became a lot looser. A portion of the sword essence passed through this screening process and remained in Guhan's sword mark. However, unlike the screen, the sword essence that leaked out were not small stones that were unsuitable for the sword mark. Instead, they were exactly the same as the sword essence that was left behind. Until now, humans had not figured out why a portion of the sword essence could not be left in the sword mark. Generally speaking, the sword essence transfer by the sword mark transfer method was fixed at about 50%. This was a common figure for all sword wielders. However, what was strange was that 70% of the sword essence actually remained in Qingpin's body, and only 30% entered Gahan's sword mark. In other words, when killing a soul realm Yuan Ko, Guhan actually obtained 20% less sword essence than others. Just like the sword essence oral fluid, there was no record of a sword wielder using the sword essence transfer technique in the past 1,000 years of history who had only managed to transfer 30% of the sword essence. This meant that if he only relied on killing Yuan Ko to increase his sword essence, Gahan might be twice as slow as other sword wielders. When Gahan withdrew the sword mark into his body and released the sword essence into his purple palace, he opened his eyes and ended the first sword mark transfer in Gahan's life. Qingpin, can you explain why only 20% of the sword essence went to? Asked Gahan very solemnly as he stroked Qingpin's little head after Qingpin returned to her sword maiden form. Qingpin can feel that there is something in Qingpin's body, said Qingpin, who rarely showed a cute expression. There seemed to be a hint of sorrow on her face. Qingpin wants to accumulate the power to break through that thing. Is that so? Gahan was stunned. He thought of the sword burial ground when he met Qingpin, thought of Kenzu, and thought of the little fiend who suddenly lost the ability to fly. Qingpin seemed to be hiding a lot of secrets. These secrets were a lot more than the secrets he had on him. Gahan even speculated that there was a certain connection between his own secrets and Qingpin's. Chapter 126. It had been a full day of ups and downs. He had entered the game to be interviewed, discussed the strategy for the hidden dungeon with light-shaking realm, discharged from the hospital, and accidentally unlocked a super cheat. He had to work hard to transfer the sword essence to the poor. In short, even someone as strong as Gahan felt exhausted after a day. Taking a bath was a good way to relieve fatigue. Guhan's new house had its own 15-square-meter bathtub. As long as he turned on the faucet, the 45-degree hot spring water would automatically fill the bathtub. This way, Gahan could enjoy the fun of taking a hot spring bath at home. Soaking in the slightly hot spring, Gahan's fatigue began to fade. He emptied his mind and stopped thinking about the sword essence, the sword wielder, Yuan Ko, and hatred. He simply enjoyed this wonderful time in the bath. In the living room, next to the bathroom, Qingpin was still making a ruckus. After showing a rare, serious expression, she returned to her carefree state and grabbed Gahan's neck to ask for compensation. Fortunately, when Maiden came back in time and stuffed Qingpin's chattering mouth with a piece of delicious dompa pork, Have I already spent half of the 200,000 yuan I earned today? Gahan, who said he didn't want to do chores, couldn't help but worry about his wallet. He didn't know how long the 100,000 yuan he gave to Wen Meiyun could last. With the terrible appetite of the poor, it would be very difficult for them to even last 10 days. I still don't have enough money. How did I end up with such a glutton? Gahan let out a long sigh. Even when he was so poor that he couldn't even open a pot and could only rely on nutrient solutions to survive, he never let out a sigh. In the end, how many times had he let out a long sigh when he thought that the unlucky Qing Pin was cute? Master, can Meiyun come in? When Meiyun's question suddenly came from outside the bathtub. Through the glass door of the bathtub, he could see a graceful figure. What are you doing in here? Gahan was stunned. He had taken so many baths, but this was the first time someone planned to come in. Master, Meiyun will serve you in the bath. When Meiyun's words made Gahan's heart tremble. That's right, as a maid, it was every maid's duty to serve their master while he bathed. It was something that every maid had to do, and it had to be done well. Could a maid who couldn't serve her master comfortably still be a qualified maid? That's right, this was a popular and popular benefit chapter. As an excellent novel with high morality, longevity, and high prestige, how could it not have these popular and popular benefit chapters? Otherwise, how could the author be worthy of the eager and expectant gazes of the readers? In most cases, the hypocritical male protagonist with despicable morals would righteously reject the maid's request to serve and bathe them, displaying the image of a pure and innocent young man. And the maids would first be moved by the righteous male protagonist, then forcibly enter the bathroom and serve the protagonist. All of this was done willingly by the maids. It was caused by the evil class system and had nothing to do with the pure and kind male protagonist. It's a pity that our frozen cold is destined to take an unusual path. Come in. Gahan didn't refuse hypocritically. He didn't even hesitate and directly called Wen Meiyun in. Thus, Wen Meiyun, who was blushing, slowly walked in, regretting in her heart that she had offered to serve Gahan in the bath. It was obvious that Gahan didn't know he had this obligation at all. As Qing Pin finished eating, as soon as Wen Meiyun came in, Gahan didn't ask anything else and rushed to ask about Qing Pin's situation first. The poor lady has finished her meal and is now looking at Shuck and Betta. Wen Meiyun replied in a soft voice. Oh, very good. Close the bathroom door tightly and remember to lock it from the inside. Don't let Qing Pin come in. Gahan instructed like this. As if afraid that Wen Meiyun would think too much, he added, let's not disturb Qing Pin watching cartoons. Are you afraid that my voice will be too loud and disturb Lady Qing Pin watching cartoons? Wen Meiyun secretly complained in her heart, but didn't dare to disobey Gahan's orders. She obediently closed the bathroom door and even locked it from the inside. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take off your clothes. Seeing that Wen Meiyun had locked the door, Gahan threw out such a sentence. Wen Meiyun's body trembled a little. Her fingers were placed on the zipper of her clothes, but she didn't move for a long time. Hurry up, Gahan impatiently urged. Wen Meiyun finally accepted her fate and obediently pulled down the zipper. She then took off her maid uniform and threw it on the ground. Wen Meiyun actually only wore a maid outfit on the outside. Inside, she was directly wearing underwear, panties, and suspenders. However, Wen Meiyun did not wear some hollowed-out lace, or simply transparent and small mature women's seductive underwear. But like a girl, she wore pure cotton underwear that was as white as snow. Even the suspenders she wore were pure white. From this, it could be seen that Wen Meiyun was actually a very conservative, mature woman. Fortunately, there was a rule that maids must wear suspenders. Otherwise, this rare touch of sexy element would not appear on Wen Meiyun's body. Come in. Help me scrub my back. Gahan didn't ask Wen Meiyun to take off the rest of her clothes. Instead, he asked her directly into the bathroom to scrub his back. Wen Meiyun breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Her steps were light, and a pair of slender and plump legs stepped into the bath in front of Gahan's eyes. This beautiful leg was so attractive that even if any man saw this scene, he couldn't help but have some thoughts of floating in the air. We don't know if Gahan had such thoughts, because his lower body was completely immersed in the water. As soon as when Maiyun entered the bath, she quickly sat in the bath, leaving only the body above the chest exposed to the water. She clearly knew which part of her body would make men have an uncontrollable desire. It was better to hide these parts. She picked up Gahan's towel on the edge of the bath, dipped it in water, and began to wipe it on Gahan's bare back. When Maiyun noticed that Guhan's back muscles were very developed. Usually, it seemed to be no different from an ordinary boy. However, the moment she touched it, she would be able to feel the astonishing power hidden beneath his skin. In addition, when Maiyun also noticed that there was a huge wound on Guhan's back that extended from his neck all the way to his waist. When Maiyun knew that this should be a knife wound, because her husband, Longmeier, also had a similar knife wound on his body. However, Longmeier's wound was on his stomach. When Maiyun looked at the knife wound in a daze, she couldn't help but stretch out her hand, wanting to touch the wound. Looking at the wound, she felt as though she was looking at Longmeier. "Don't touch it." Feeling when Maiyun's hand movements, Gahan, who was lying on the edge of the bath, immediately berated, scaring when Maiyun out of her world. She hurriedly started to scrub his back again. "You're curious about this knife wound?" When Maiyun's technique was exceedingly superb, causing Gohan's entire body to feel as light as a feather, causing his thoughts to return back to that time 12 years ago. This was left behind by a Jedi Knight. Although their lightsabers are called swords and look like swords, they're completely made using knife techniques. Furthermore, even their knife techniques are unbearably crude. When I was 8 years old, I was already able to use sword techniques to beat them up. It's a pity that when I was 6 years old, I was still left with such a sword wound. What a joke. When Maiyun did not say anything, as she didn't know what to say. Should she flatter and praise her master for being awesome? When Maiyun continued to silently scrub his back. After scrubbing his back a dozen times, she started to shift her attention to Gahan's neck, arms, and thighs. These were the parts that an outstanding maid would have to take good care of. After when Maiyun finished scrubbing Gahan's neck and arms, she moved on to his thighs. However, at this moment, when Maiyun hesitated, if she were to scrub his thighs, it would mean that she would definitely touch that part of Gahan's body. When Maiyun did not want to touch that part. Splash! When Maiyun was still in a dilemma, but Gahan suddenly turned over, and the water splashed all over when Maiyun's body. The cotton bra that was originally dry became wet in an instant. I don't know if any of you have seen the scene of a cotton bra getting wet and then becoming somewhat transparent and sticking to the flesh. I have to say, this is a very beautiful scene. However, unfortunately, in order to not touch that warning line, the author could only skim over it. "Master, do you need Maiyun to scrub the front?" Seeing Gahan suddenly turn over, when Maiyun thought that Gahan wanted her to scrub the front. And Gahan nodded, and when Maiyun couldn't refuse. She could only start from Gahan's strong abdomen and start a scrub. When she was on Gahan's back, when Maiyun could still avoid certain parts. However, once she was on the front, even if that part was submerged in water, when Maiyun could still see it clearly. However, the strange thing was that in the face of such an alluring scene, that part did not change at all. It did not even have the slightest thought of raising its head. The expression on Gahan's face also became stranger and stranger. It was as if he had seen some kind of hilarious performance or met with a happy event of 5 million falling from the sky. But he was holding his mouth, not daring to laugh out loud. Almost in an instant, Gahan's personal terminal was flooded with such news. Respected sword wielder Gahan, someone in the game has read the paid post that your small account, Military Governor 12580, posted on the forum. The Military Governor, I will personally explain how to get an SSS rating. After paying 5 renminbi and deducting 20% of the personal income tax, for renminbi has been automatically transferred into your personal account. Respected sword wielder Gahan, someone in the game has read the paid post that your small account, Military Governor 12580, posted on the forum. I am Military Governor. I will personally explain how to get an SSS rating. After paying 5 renminbi and deducting 20% of the personal income tax, for renminbi has been automatically transferred into your personal account. Respected sword wielder Gahan, Someone in the game has read the paid post that your small account, Military Governor 12580, posted on the forum. I am Military Governor. I will personally explain how to get an SSS rating. I think it's very good and have tipped you 1,888 renminbi. After deducting 20% of the personal income tax, 1,510 renminbi, for has been automatically transferred into your personal account. Respected sword wielder Gahan, due to receiving too many similar messages, the system has automatically turned on the Do Not Disturb mode for you. You can click on this message to understand the accumulated messages. Chapter 127. This world was too crazy. 10 minutes ago, Gahan was still worrying about Xing Pin's food expenses. Now, Gahan was fretting over the various notifications. Logically speaking, Gahan was rich. Gahan was rich. In just 10 minutes, Gahan received more than 10,000 notifications. That's right, more than 10,000 similar notifications. They all told Gahan that someone spent 5 renminbi to read his guide post. These 10,000 notifications meant that the final income of 40,000 renminbi had been transferred to Gahan's personal account. However, this was only a small portion. It wasn't enough to make Gahan rich. What really made Gahan rich was the less than 1,000 tips. The lowest tip was 10 renminbi and the highest was 10 renminbi. Gahan scanned through the tips and realized that most of them were in the 100 renminbi range. There were quite a few tips that were as high as 588, 1888. The highest tip that Gahan saw was from a game ID called Soul Eater. This guy tipped Gahan 500,000 renminbi in one go. That's right, 500,000 renminbi. Gahan took a deep breath, then clicked on his account and checked his account balance. The total amount of 2 million almost blinded Gahan's eyes. What exactly happened? Why did my post suddenly explode? Actually, Gahan guessed that it was because of the Invincible Swordsman interview. As expected, when Gahan opened the official website of Invincible Swordsman, his interview video filled the entire homepage. Looking at it, all the other links had been removed. Looking at the number of viewers of this interview, it had actually exceeded 200,000. Is the subscription ratio only 20? This is going to be a flop. Gahan smiled as he thought of a joke from 1,000 years ago. He then entered the game forum and was shocked to find that the top vote on the front page of the forum was his guide. He clicked on it and saw that the number of replies had already exceeded 100,000. Furthermore, it was increasing at a rate of 4,000 to 5,000 replies per minute. It was increasing at an insane rate. For example, OP is so handsome. The OP is too awesome. OP, please accept my knee. OP, please post the Easter egg walkthrough for the Wudong Peak dungeon. I'll give you 1,888 renminbi as a reward. Comments like this were everywhere. When he logged into his Smuff account, he was greeted by thousands of friend requests. Gahan ignored the requests and closed the website. He wondered if he should write another post like the Military Governor reveals the secret of the Wudong Sect's top dungeon. After thinking for a long time, Gahan felt that it was better not to exhaust the goose that laid the golden eggs. He had to take it slow. Now that everyone had tipped him with their spare money, he would definitely not earn much if he posted an Easter egg post. It would be better to wait for a month or two when everyone's wallets were fuller before releasing a new strategy. Since he couldn't post a new strategy post, Gahan thought for a while and used the Military Governor 12580 account to post a post titled, "Thank you, everyone. My post." Then, there was only one sentence. "Thank you, everyone, for your support. Please give your recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and tips to a guy called Stormy Billows, who wrote the great novel Sword Maiden. This guy hasn't eaten for a month." It was already the third day when Gahan entered the game again. Before this, Gahan had spent all his energy reading and researching the history of King Arthur's defection and the various dungeon videos provided by Yaoguang. If it wasn't for the fact that today was the agreed day to collect the restored King Yu from Gong Sun Ji, Gahan would probably have to research for a few more days. There was simply too little historical information about King Arthur. Gahan even went to Yuzhong City's library and stayed there for 2 days. As some of the information was stored in the library, it was not uploaded to the internet. It should be mentioned that the popularity of Gahan's post had gradually decreased. He only received a few 100,000 yuan a day, unlike the first day. At 23:59 that day, Gahan received a total of 6.48 million yuan. He paid off all the hospital's debts. After Gahan entered the game, he immediately contacted Gong Sunji. However, Gong Sunji stuttered. After a long time, he finally admitted to Gahan that the restoration of the King Yu's sword had run into trouble. Gong Sunji's personal workshop was his sword grave. The sword grave was unique to every player in the game. It was a house that existed in a dimensional space. It was the thatched hut that Gahan was assigned to when he entered the game. As long as he invested money, he could gradually upgrade his sword grave from a thatched hut to a 1-bedroom, 1 living room, 3-bedroom, 2 living room, villas, buildings, gardens, and villas. To enter his own sword grave, he only needed to think about it. To enter someone else's sword grave, he needed to go to the Quantum Transmission Center in Yuzhong City, enter the serial number of the sword grave he wanted to enter, and get permission from the owner. Guhan keyed in Gong Sunji's sword catacomb number into the Quantum Transmission Center and waited for almost 10 minutes. When Guhan almost thought that Gong Sunji had absconded with his sword lady, she finally received Gong Sunji's permission to enter the sword catacomb. Gong Sunji's sword grave was already at the level of a villa. Other than a small building, the rest of the space was occupied by Gong Sunji's forging room. When he entered the forging room, he saw a huge electric furnace the size of a shipping container. That's right, it was an electric furnace. It was a famous electric furnace produced by the Zeppelin high-frequency electronic furnace factory in Berlin Bay City. It was a new generation of high-tech products that used black fuel and was electronically controlled. The sky blue coating was full of sci-fi colors. With one press of the button, the temperature instantly rose to 6,000 degrees. The amazing German electric furnace was worth at least tens of millions. Gohan roughly understood why Gong Sunji was so poor. Is there a problem? It looks like it's already repaired. Gohan walked to the side of the electric furnace. Through the 3 layers of insulating glass, he could clearly see that the Yu King's sword was floating in the electric furnace. The various scars and cracks on its body had all disappeared. It looked no different from a normal Yu King with full durability. It only looks like it. Gong Sunji shook his head. Do you see? There's still a crack about 1 centimeter long on the hilt. It hasn't healed. I can't see it. Guhan answered honestly. Through the glass, he saw a crack that was less than 1 centimeter on a sword 10 meters away. Guhan knew that he did not have such eyesight. I can see it. Gong Sunji's eyesight wasn't as good as Gahan's, but the will of a swordsmith could magically merge with the electric furnace. He could use his mind to observe the condition of the sword lady in the furnace. It's been 3 hours. This crack has been smelted for 3 hours, but it still can't melt any further. It's still there. Then what does this crack mean? Gohan asked. It means that the Yu King's Gojian sword's durability is stuck at 99%, and it's been stuck for 3 hours without any progress. At this rate, even if it's smelted for another 300 hours, there won't be any change. Gong Sunji also had a pained expression. Why is it like this? Gohan's face turned green. He had to go to the dungeon with Yao Wang's people tomorrow. How could he wait for 300 hours? I don't know either. I've already done all the steps perfectly. Gong Sunji sighed. I don't care. You're a swordsmith. I've already handed my sword lady to you. You must think of a way to repair the Yu King by today. Otherwise, you can return my deposit to me, and, according to the rules, I'll compensate you 10 times the amount. Gohan was also very anxious, but he didn't know anything about swordsmithing, so he could only threaten Gong Sunji. When Gong Sunji heard that Gohan wanted him to pay 10 times the amount, he almost vomited blood. He already owed a lot of money. Where'd he find the money to pay Gohan? As the saying goes, the wheel of fortune turns. Gohan was still in debt a few days ago, but now he could ask someone else to pay him back in the blink of an eye. I don't have any other way. Gong Sunji scratched his messy hair and said unwillingly, but that old guy should have a way. If it really doesn't work, I'll have to ask him, but he's asking for a very high price. I don't have the money to pay him. Who's this old guy you're talking about? Gahan immediately answered, I'll pay for it. As long as the Yu King is repaired, I'll pay for it. What a pain in the ass. Gong Sunji dialed the number with a bitter expression. Hello, Dad. It's me. You're my son. Okay, I was wrong. I'm your son. Your son is in some trouble, and the client has already asked me to pay 10 times the amount. Yes, pay. The client is willing to pay, not make you work for free. It turned out that the old guy Gong Sunji was talking about was his own father. The old guy arrived very quickly. In less than 2 minutes, he appeared in Gong Sunji's sword catacomb. Brat, you haven't contacted your father for half a year. You're really something. Don't come to me for help if you can. As soon as he arrived at Gahan Ji's sword catacomb, the old guy hugged Gahan passionately and taunted him loudly. Sir, you don't know, but this brat isn't skilled enough. I've scolded him so many times, but he refuses to learn. It's a complete waste of time for you to give him the business. How about this? Let's sign a contract and become strategic partners. In the future, I'll give you a 9% discount. Gong Sunji's father was also a jerk. As soon as they met, he immediately tried to steal his own son. Gong Sunyu, if you say one more word, I'll kick you out immediately. Gong Sunji couldn't take it anymore and exploded. TCH, Gong Sunyu shrugged and walked in front of the electric stove. He asked disdainfully, What's the problem that you, your detestable father, have to deal with it? Gong Sunji explained the situation of a Yu King to Gong Sunyu with a cold expression. Gong Sunyu's eyes lit up as he listened. He walked around the electric stove a few times and slapped his head. I understand. Chapter 128. As for what Gong Sunyu understood, he did not say. However, he circled around Guhan a few times and sized him up from head to toe for a long time. Suddenly, he said, Customer, the damage to the Yu King's Gojian sword should not be as simple as you said. It was only damaged by the dragon flames, right? Let me make a bold guess. I'm afraid that not only did your king you lose 99% of its durability, even the sword mark between the two of you has been destroyed to the point where it seems to have no substance at all. The reason why King Yu hasn't been able to repair it yet is because of your sword mark. When Gong Sunyu spoke, he had the air of a scheming and unfathomable charlatan. Gong Sunyu was completely unaware that he was already a million miles away from the truth. What sword mark being destroyed to the point where Gahan and King Yu didn't even have sword marks, okay? King Yu was a sword maiden that Gahan had grafted onto when Kinzu's fleeting year calendar was about to synchronize. This method was good in every way and didn't have any side effects. However, the biggest flaw was that there was no sword mark in the sword wielder's body. I actually forgot that I don't have King Yu's sword mark in my body. Gahan blamed himself. He actually forgot that he didn't have King Yu's sword mark in his body. However, the strange thing was that Gahan had all the functions related to the sword mark. For example, the sword mark sound transmission, forceful command, forceful sword return, and other abilities to command and communicate with the sword maiden. Gahan didn't lack any of them and could do all of them. Thus, Gahan had always ignored the existence of the sword mark and felt that it didn't have much of an effect. Only when he repaired King Yu today did he realize that the sword mark had become the biggest obstacle to King Yu's recovery. How is it, customer? Did I guess correctly? It was a pity that Gong Sunyu didn't have a white beard. Otherwise, he would be the best candidate to play the role of an old Taoist priest. Master Gong Sun is very perceptive. Military governor, I admire you. Respect. Although Gong Sunyu's guess was wrong, he had actually guessed the crux of the problem. To a certain extent, damaged sword marks and no sword marks were the same thing. Therefore, Gahan simply took the opportunity to admit that Gong Sunyu had guessed correctly. Then, he asked the next question, Since Master Gong Sun knows the cause of the problem, I wonder if you can repair King Yu and let her recover? Of course. Gong Sunyu's words made Gahan's heart lighten. It was good that it could be repaired. However, Gong Sunyu's tone changed. However, there is still a problem. What problem? Gahan's heart tightened. Could it be that repairing King Yu still required some rare materials? Of course, it's about you lying to my idiot son. Gong Sunyu said angrily, How dare you hide the important news of the sword mark's damage from my son? I think you're a villain with ulterior motives. Gahan was speechless. In the blink of an eye, he had become a villain with ulterior motives. However, thinking about it, Gahan did hide such important information from Gongsun Ji. However, Gahan did not hide it on purpose. He truly did not know that the sword mark would become such a serious obstacle during the repair process. Old man, what are you saying? Don't insult my guest. Gongsun Ji yelled at his father unhappily. This is my business. I don't need a stinking old man like you to butt in. Shut up, you wastrel idiot. You're a disgrace to the Gongsun family. Gongsun, you knocked Gongsun Ji's head without any hesitation. You idiot. Do you know how much damage this will cause to the Gongsun family? If we can't even repair a mere famed sword lady, won't our Gongsun clan's reputation in the world of swordsmith be ruined? Tisk, hasn't the Gongsun family's reputation been ruined in the hands of an old man like you? Gongsun Ji retorted. This time, it was Gongsun Yu's turn to be speechless. He snorted for a while, then ignored Gongsun Ji. He turned to Gahan and said, Guest, we won't do this business anymore. Also, you deliberately hid the damage and broke the rules of the swordsmithing world. Just you wait for the arbitration. You stinking brat, throw that sword out and return it to this evil guest. Things suddenly took a turn for the worse. Gongsun Yu was about to throw Gohan's king of Yu out of the furnace. Once it came out of the furnace, all the previous repairs would be in vain. Even if Gahan went to another shop, he would not be able to get the Go Jian sword in perfect condition the next day. Fine, I admit defeat this time. Gohan shook his head and grabbed Gongsun Yu's shoulder. Stinking old man, you just want money. Tell me, how much do you want? I don't want to waste time with you. Gahan was rich now. He had a few million yuan in his bank account. He was a completely different person from the frugal Gahan from 2 days ago. What? You dare to call me a stinking old man? This is disrespect to the senior swordsmiths. I'm going to complain to the arbitration. 100,000 RMB. Humph. Do you think 100,000 RMB is enough to get rid of us? Open your eyes and see. Our Gongsun family is not the kind of family that will bow down for 5 buckets of rice. 200,000. Our Gongsun family has a long history and is a swordsmithing family that has lasted for 500 years. Do you think a mere 200,000 RMB can humiliate our pride? 500,000. Ahem, look, my son, Gongsun Ji, is a famed sword master, and I, Gongsun Yu, am a 1 in a million spiritual sword grandmaster. A master swordsmith and a grandmaster swordsmith are working for you. Don't you think you're looking down on them with 500,000? 100. Gohan shouted. This is the most I can offer. If you ask for more, I'll go to the Peerless Sword Shop. Even the prices there aren't as high as yours. Okay, deal. It's settled. Gongsun Yu clapped his hands and laughed. See that, stinking brat? Old Ginger is spicier. You worked so hard for 3 days and only earned 30,000 RMB. Your father just said 1 word and you earn 1 million. Don't you want half? No, 70% of it to your dear father. Gongsun Yu, you idiot. Dementia. Gongsun Ji's face was red with shame as he cursed. You're the idiot, a middle-aged man with dementia. I won't even give you a share of the 1 million. Gongsun Yu hugged Gohan's shoulder and pretended to be close. Come, rich man. 1 million. Transfer it to me. Okay, please keep it. Gohan smiled and transferred the money over. Almost a second later, Gongsun Yu received the notification of the money transfer. Gongsun Yu opened his account proudly. When he saw the balance, his expression changed, and he pushed Gohan away. You stinking brat, are you messing with me? No, I didn't, Gohan said coldly. Then why only 100 RMB? To prove that he was telling the truth, Gongsun Yu projected his account transfer record in the air. It clearly stated that 100 RMB was transferred from the military governor's account to Gongsun Yu's account. Seeing this, Gongsun Ji felt deeply ashamed of his father. He covered his eyes in pain and squatted on the ground. That's right, this much. Gohan smiled evilly. That's right, 100 RMB. Not a cent more, not a cent less. Are you an idiot? We agreed on 1 million. Gongsun Yu was so anxious that his eyes turned red. Oh, Maybe Senior Gongsun is old and your hearing is not good. Maybe you overheard the word million and mistook 100 RMB for 1 million. Gohan smiled evilly again. Do you want me to play the recording for you to recall? Gohan thought, and Gohan and Gongsun used conversation replayed in his mind. 100,000 RMB. Humph. Do you think 100,000 RMB is enough to get rid of us? Open your eyes and see. Our Gongsun family is not the kind of family that will bow down for 5 buckets of rice. 200,000. Our Gongsun family has a long history. We are a family of swordsmiths that has lasted for 500 years. Do you think a mere 200,000 RMB can humiliate our pride? 500,000. Ahem. Look, my son Gongsun Ji is a master swordsmith, and Gongsun Yu is a 1 in a million spiritual sword grandmaster swordsmith. A master swordsmith and a grandmaster swordsmith are working for you. Don't you think 500,000 RMB is too low? 100. Okay, deal. It's settled then. The evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. Gohan had indeed said 100 RMB. All right, I've already sent this recording to BAT for notarization. This is already a legally binding contract. If you violate the contract, we will see it in the arbitration. I'm a jungler. Gongsun Yu slumped to the ground. Things were not going according to his script. 100 RMB is not even enough to pay for the materials. Old man, what method do you have to fix Yuan Jian? Hurry up and fix it for Mr. Military Governor. Gongsun Ji walked to his father and helped him up. Are you stupid? 100 RMB is not even enough to buy a piece of 100 refinement iron. Fix it for him. Gongsun Yu said weakly. Look at this. Gongsun Ji shook his head and projected the day's news into the air. Honorable Sword Forger Gongsun Ji, you have received a remittance of 100,000 yuan. Please check it. Gongsun Yu, who was in a daze, suddenly heard a heavenly voice in his ears. This is the deposit. As long as Yuan Jian fixes it, there will be another 100,000 renminbi transferred to you. Gohan patted Gongsun Yu's shoulder. How you split it is your son's business. Chapter 129. Brat, what's the highest temperature your German stove can reach? Gongsun Yu, who had recovered his energy, stood in front of Gohan Ji's stove. Just now, Gohan Ji had promised to give him half of the 200,000 renminbi, which was 100,000 renminbi. Therefore, Gongsun Yu immediately regained his fighting spirit and started to help Gohan repair the Yu-King sword. The upper limit is 16,000 degrees, but if you turn off the safety settings, it can be raised to 18,000 degrees. Gongsun Ji answered honestly. Then raise it to 18,000 degrees. Gongsun Yu gave the order without hesitation. Although Gongsun Ji didn't like his father, he didn't doubt his father's order at all. He turned off all the safety measures and raised the temperature to 18,000 degrees, along with a warning that the furnace might explode if it went over 16,000 degrees. According to the order and weight I told you before, throw all the ingredients into the furnace. To repair the Yu-King sword, Gongsun Yu prepared another batch of expensive materials. Gohan saw that there were more than 3 types of materials on the list that were priced at 20,000 renminbi per gram. This batch of materials would probably cost around 100,000 renminbi. When Gongsun Ji put all the materials into the stove according to the order and raised the temperature to 18,000 degrees, the small crack on the Yu-King sword finally began to heal. The originally 1 centimeter crack gradually shrank to 8 millimeters, 6 millimeters, 4 millimeters, 2 millimeters, 1 millimeter. However, when the crack shrank to 1 millimeter, it stopped healing. It froze at 1 millimeter for an hour without any change. Old man, did you use the wrong recipe? Gongsun Ji could not help but question the situation. Shut up. Why did I give birth to a stupid son like you? Gongsun Yu's words made Gongsun Ji choke. The Yu-King sword was damaged along with the sword mark. If we don't repair the sword mark, even if the crack shrank to 1 millimeter or 1 nanometer, it will still exist. But old man, according to what you said, the sword mark is not in the Yu-King sword. Even if the Yu-King cultivates for the rest of his life, he won't be able to repair the sword mark. Gongsun Ji said hesitantly. Yes, so we have to find a way to repair the sword scar. Although Gong Sun Yu was talking to Gong Sun Ji, his eyes were fixed on Gahan. Logically speaking, King Yu's sword mark should be inside Gahan's body. What do you need me to do? Gahan sensed Gong Sun Yu's intention and asked in a deep voice. I don't know if Mr. Military Governor has heard of the legends of Mo Xie and Ganjiang sword. Gong Sun Yu suddenly asked a somewhat off-topic question. I know. Gahan nodded. Legend has it that during the spring and autumn period, when the Middle Ages and ancient times were connected, there was a famous swordsmith, Ganjiang. He was as famous as the god of craftsmanship, Ojizi. The king of Chu ordered Ganjiang to forge a pair of swords using all sorts of rare treasures. However, these materials could not be melted even after 3 years. The king of Chu felt that Ganjiang had deceived him and planned to kill Ganjiang. In desperation, Ganjiang's wife, also a swordsmith master, Mo Xie, jumped into the swordsmithing furnace and used her own body to melt all the rare treasures. Only then did she forge 2 unparalleled spiritual swords, Ganjiang and Mo Xie. According to the records, these 2 swords are rare spirit sword maidens that were forged by humans. Haha, so Mr. Military Governor is so knowledgeable. Then don't you know that today's incident with the King of Chu is similar to Ganjiang and Mo Xie 4,000 years ago? Old thing, what do you mean by this? My Gong Sun clan's swordsmithing path is upright and upright, the path of a sage on the inside and a king on the outside. How can we walk such a crooked path and harm the lives of others? Hearing Gong Sun Yu's words, Gong Sun Ji's expression suddenly changed. This Gong Sun Yu actually wanted to use such an evil method? Stinking brat, what upright and upright? It's all a lie to idiots like you. Which famous sword, spiritual sword, or immortal sword doesn't come with blood? Gong Sun Yu's face was full of disdain. Mr. Military Governor, that's all I have to say. Whether this king of Chu sword succeeds or not depends on your own opinion. After all, the sword mark is in your body. Gong Sun Yu's so-called method was for Gahan to learn from Mo Xie 4,000 years ago and jump into the furnace, using his own body and the sword mark to smelt the king of Chu sword. Who asked the sword mark to be in Gahan's body? Gahan hesitated. It wasn't that he was afraid of death. After all, this was a game, and he wasn't in a dungeon. If he died, he would immediately revive. What Gahan was hesitating about was that he didn't have any sword mark in his body. If he jumped in, it would probably be useless. However, this was probably the only way to save the king of Chu sword. Gahan stood in place, not moving. All right, Mr. Military Governor, I have to remind you of something. If you decide to jump in, please stab the king of Chu sword into your mind palace before you die. Although the temperature inside is as high as 18,000 degrees, you should be able to live for about 5 seconds. You'll be able to experience the closest feeling to hell in this world. Then may I ask, Mr. Military Governor, have you made up your mind? I've made up my mind. Open the furnace. Tis TSK, I didn't expect someone to be willing to jump in. Although there's no need to be afraid of death in the game, the 5 seconds of hell are like that. Gong Sun Yu clicked his tongue in praise when he saw Gu Han jump down from the top of the furnace without any hesitation. As for Gong Sun Ji, this was the first time he had seen someone die for the sword. He stared at the scene inside the furnace through the glass. The moment Gahan fell into the furnace, he pounced at the king of Chu's sword floating in the furnace. In the blink of an eye, the king of Chu's sword stabbed into Gahan's body. Then, all of Gahan's hair turned into sparks. His skin quickly dehydrated and fell off. His muscles could dissolve, and his fat almost instantly melted into oil before vaporizing. In just 5 seconds, all the organic matter on Gahan's body had been vaporized, leaving only a pile of bones that were still being burned. In a few more minutes, these bones would also be completely cremated, turning into a pile of powder. However, Gong Sun Ji and Gong Sun, you couldn't see the scene of the bones turning to dust. After all, this was a game. After Gahan died, his corpse turned into sparks of light and disappeared from the game. What a joke. What a joke. Who would have thought that the idiot would actually fall for a method I came up with? He actually jumped down. Gong Sun Yu burst into laughter when he saw Gahan die. He laughed so hard that tears were coming out of his eyes. Old thing, you're saying that you came up with this method? Gongsun Ji asked in disbelief. Of course. Which book in the Gongsun clan has recorded this evil method of sacrificing oneself for the sword? Gongsun Yu harumphed coldly. This idiot, how dare he trick me with a word game? Did he really think that I, Gongsun Yu, would throw away my principles for 200,000 renminbi? Letting him die once in the game is really letting him off easy. You bastard. Gongsun Ji punched himself in the chest. How am I going to explain this to the military governor when he comes back? That's your problem. After all, you're the one who accepted the order, you're the one who bought the materials, and you're the one who repaired the sword yourself. My idiot son, I'm just giving you a suggestion. It has nothing to do with me. F***CK. The viewers could more or less understand why the relationship between Gongsun Ji and Gongsun Yu is so messed up. With a father like this, no one would be able to get along well. Ding dong. At that moment, the electric furnace suddenly chimed. Gongsun Ji was all too familiar with this sound. The furnace would only make such a sound when the sword maiden was completely repaired. When the furnace made such a sound, it meant that the King of Yu had completely repaired it. What the hell? Gongsun Ji and Gongsun Yu looked at each other. They were starting to get confused. The fire in the cauldron gradually subsided, and King Yu was automatically sent out. Ignoring the scorching heat from the sword, Gongsun Ji and Gongsun Yu each picked up a magnifying glass and examined the sword. As expected, the cracks on the sword had completely disappeared. The King of Yu's Gojin sword was completely repaired. Old thing, did you really come up with this sword sacrifice technique? Gongsun Ji couldn't believe his eyes. His worldview had been refreshed a few times today. If I told you that I didn't come up with this, would you believe me? Gongsun Yu was just as surprised as Gongsun Ji. Just as they were about to study it in detail, Gongsun Ji's communicator rang. Mr. Military Governor is back. He's knocking on the door. When Gongsun Ji said this, he felt very ashamed. Although it seemed like he had accidentally fixed King Yu. When he thought about how it was just a trap his father had dug, he felt a sense of shame from the bottom of his heart. Let him in. At least we can still earn another 100,000. Gongsun Yu didn't feel ashamed at all. He smiled and patted his son's shoulder like a brother. Hey, we had a deal. The remaining 100,000 is mine. Whether it was Gongsun Ji, Gongsun Yu, or Gahan who came in later, none of them noticed that the words King of Yu's Gojin sword were even less pronounced than the King of Yu's. Chapter 130. Sword Maiden Online, Xianyang City Ruins, Parking Lot P4 outside the Xianyang Airport's checkpoint. It was said that during the apocalypse, over 1,000 cars had been parked in this parking lot. However, after over 1,000 years of evolution, only the skeletons of these cars remained. If one were to touch these skeletons that were originally made of steel, they would shatter in a powder like biscuits. In the game, very few people would come to this place. This was because there were no regional bosses, no rare materials, and no dimensional crystal mines. A few months ago, this place was a barren wasteland. It was rare for thousands of people to come here in a year. But last month, the peace here was broken. A group of players began to set up camp here, set up a stronghold, set up a teleportation portal, build a wall, and set up dozens of hidden observation points around the camp, monitoring the entire area within a radius of tens of kilometers around the camp. The ruins vaguely gave off the feeling of a small town. The reason for this was naturally because this was the entrance to the hidden dungeon. Yaoguang Sword Sect, Nine State Sword Sect, and Hung Mountain Sword Sect had all completed the unlocked chain quests. They began to set up camp here, set up supply points, and continued to attack the hidden dungeon. This place was not like most online games, where there was no melodramatic war between sects for the sake of snatching the entrance to the hidden dungeon. That was because the entire human world strictly forbade sword bearers from fighting each other for the sake of benefits. Even if the game included a sect PK system, if anyone dared to start a war between sects for the sake of benefits, once it was announced, all humans and players would despise these sects that took the initiative to provoke them. This was proven by historical facts. A few years after the game's launch, two of the most powerful sects at that time started a war for the ownership of the green silk sword. In the end, the cause of the war, the source of the war, and the videos were all published in detail. The sword bearers who had originally joined these two sword sects began to withdraw in large numbers. The two great sects, which originally had over 1 million members, had less than 10,000 people left in just a week. They had completely fallen into disuse and became a joke after a meal. If there was any irrepressible hatred between the two sword bearers, they would have to report it to the council. If the hatred between the two parties wasn't triggered by illegal reasons, the council would arrange for a duel between the two parties on the premise that there would be no deaths or injuries, or simply based on the number of yuan worms of the same level that one party had killed within a certain period of time. Generally speaking, in the face of Yuan Ko's threat, humans were very decisive in suppressing all conflicts between humans, at least on the surface, and appeared to be very united. As for the crafty plots in the dark, only the heavens knew. Even though Yaoguang Sword Faction, 9 Provinces Sword Faction, and Hung Mountain Sword Faction were fighting each other to the death for the honor of being the first to clear the hidden instance dungeon, they were still able to work together in harmony and peace. In the Xianyang Airport camp, in the meeting room of the Yaoguang Sword Sect's encampment, 2 players had already arrived and were sitting in their seats. The tent appeared to be an ordinary tent that was only a few square meters in size. However, when they walked inside, they saw a rather luxuriously decorated meeting room with all sorts of equipment. The meeting room was over 100 square meters in size. It was a spatial tent created using dimensional technology. The 2 players who arrived earlier were famed sword bearers belonging to Yaoguang Sword Faction. One of them was a man and the other was a woman. The woman's face was delicate and seductive. Her smile was sweet, and she gave off the air of a prostitute. As for the male sword bearer, he was a bald man with muscles all over his body. He looked very valiant. Hongyu, did you hear? Yesterday, that Planet Watcher guy went back. The sect master gave him special permission not to get involved in this mess anymore. I really envy him. Don't waste time here, the bald man grumbled in dissatisfaction. What is there to envy? Now that Planet Watcher is gone, it means he's done with the quest rewards. The sect master has promised us that all the non-sect props we get from the instance dungeon will belong to us, the female sword bearer said disapprovingly. That's if we can clear that D*Ned instance dungeon. It's been 15 times already. I've had enough of it. There's nothing worse than repeating the same instance dungeon every day. Then why didn't you request to quit from the sect master? Why did you let Planet Watcher get ahead of you? The female sword bearer said with a smile. Did Planet Watcher request to leave on his own accord? That's because the 4 of them are useless. The sect master purposely asked him to leave. The person who replied was not the bald man, but another sword bearer who was dressed like a scholar. However, he had a very imposing aura. It was obvious that only someone who had been in a high position for a long time could develop such an aura. Behind the scholar were 2 other people, a man and a woman. However, the 2 of them looked very similar. Although they were of different genders, they looked like the same person. They were a pair of twin sword bearers. All right, everyone is here. Let's start the meeting. Shusheng naturally sat on the main seat. It seemed like he was the leader of this small team. Then, the pair of siblings sat on the left side of Shusheng, while the other 2 sat on the right side of him. What meeting is there? Without 6 people, we can't even enter the instance dungeon. The baldy muttered under his breath. The scholar glared fiercely at him, and the baldy immediately shut his mouth. Last night, the sect master and I chatted offline for the whole night. Today, I have a few things to announce. The relationship between the scholar and Yaoguang seemed to be very close. Otherwise, they would be so close that they would talk offline. The others also knew that the scholar and Yaoguang knew each other in real life. Therefore, they were not curious about the face-to-face conversation. First, Planet Watcher has been expelled from our pioneering team due to some inactive comments. Second, there will be a new member joining us. This is a powerful helper. Our sect master spent a lot of money to hire him. None of you are allowed to neglect him. New member? Who? Who would be stupid enough to come here? Wildflowers? Foxes? Tadpoles? These people are not as useful as Planet Watcher. The bald man could not help but say. Other than those few, who else? All the elite swordsmen in the sect are here. There is no one else. The female swordsman who was sitting with the bald man shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Our boss can still ask for help. I think Boss Yao Guang can invite that military governor who has been so popular recently. The younger twin sister said with a weird smile. Yes, yes. It would be great if Boss could invite big sister Minghua back from back then. The older twin brother also added. Are you done? The scholar slammed the table. Do you want me to chat with you alone? No, 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 no. The four of them said at the same time, rejecting the chance to chat with the scholar alone. The third thing is that the four explorers who were here previously, except for our group, will all withdraw. That is to say, from now on, we will be the only group fighting here in the Alcade Sword sect. What? Everyone was in an uproar again. For them, this was something unacceptable. The four teams were gradually falling behind 9 provinces and Mount Hung, who had caught up later. What was the point of retreating 3 more teams and leaving only one of them? They could just give the first place to someone else. Fourth, the scholar ignored the uproar and continued. From today onwards, I will step down from my position as the team commander. The new member will be the team commander. After saying this, the scholar stood up from the main seat and walked to the bald man's side. He sat down on the spot where Planet Watcher was. Great, the team was in an uproar. Why? Why can a new member take the position of commander? I, Steel Centipede, will be the first to disagree. That's right, Magic Pen is doing well. If not for him, we won't even reach 60%. He's just a new member. Why? Forget it. I don't want to do this dungeon anymore. I will leave now. If Boss Yao Guang fires me, I will accept it. I can't stay here anymore. The entire conference room was noisy. As for Brilliant Pen Scholar, who had caused all of this, he kept his head low and didn't say a single word. No one knew what he meant. What's with the noise? Do you all want to rebel? The curtain of the tent was lifted, and Mingyu walked in with her long legs, her face cold. Seeing Mingyu, everyone who was making a ruckus just now immediately became quiet out of fear, not daring to say a word. They could only sneak a few glances at Mingyu to see if this big sister's temper had subsided. Speak. Say something. Bright Moon of that year slammed the table a few more times. How dare you all rebel? Especially you, Steel Maiden Meatball. You little brat. You're getting more and more daring. How dare you talk about expulsion? Do you believe that I won't throw you back to Yao Guang right now? Sister, I was wrong. Steel Man knows his mistake. Please calm down, calm down. The ferocious-looking Steel Centipede, who was cursing nonstop, suddenly became as attentive as a eunuch. Sister, if I knew that you were going to be the commander, I, Steel Centipede, would definitely agree with you. Even my dandruff would follow your orders. I wouldn't dare to disobey a single word. Calm down, calm down. Sikon, you're right. Big Sister Bright Moon has been invited back by the sect leader. The twin sister whispered to her brother. You see you. Do you think that I can't hear you if you speak softly? Let me tell you, when I said that I would sever my relationship with Yao Guang's sword faction, I severed my relationship with Yao Guang's sword faction. I, Bright Moon, won't participate in the matters of Yao Guang's sword faction. What? Steel Man was stunned. Big sister, if it's not you, then why did you come to this godforsaken place? I came to accompany my friend. He is your new teammate and commander. Yao Guang knew that you guys would cause trouble for my friend, so he asked me to come here to ease your anger. Bright Moon snorted coldly and pulled Gahan, who had entered without anyone knowing, to her side. Let me introduce you guys. This is your new teammate and commander, the famous strategy master, Mr. Military Governor. See, you guessed it right. Yu Sikong said with a bitter face. She was convinced by her sister. Chapter 131. During this period of time, the commander's name was like thunder piercing the ears. On the forums, Tieba, and QQ groups, everyone was discussing the commander's strategy for the King of Yu Gojian Jian instance dungeon. They also called Guhan's strategy for throwing a coin, closing his eyes and flying straight to the third mission, Hand of God, the world's #1 strategy. Especially when the new players entered the game and followed this strategy, they successfully increased the S-rank clearance rate from less than 1% to 16%. All kinds of free glory fell on Guhan's head. Guhan naturally became the #1 internet celebrity in recent times. There was even Guhan's personal Tieba, personal fan group, and fan Weibo. It was said that the number of followers of the military governor's personal 8-city alliance support group had exceeded 100,000 people. It was a cause for celebration. Of course, as the game experts, the few members of the Yaoguang Sword Sect's pioneer group did not take military governor seriously. Their expressions were still vaguely filled with provocation. It was only because Mingyu was there that no one dared to do anything. This is the famous commander, and also a good friend of Big Sis, my good brother. I won't talk nonsense with you about his abilities. If you don't know, you can go online and check it out. You don't even need to search for keywords. He is the #1 trending topic. Mingyu first introduced Guhan in a domineering manner. Hello. Guhan nodded and showed his name. He did not say anything else. Military governor. Let me introduce you. Although these guys are useless except for Magic Pen, they're the absolute elites of Yaoguang. In the game, they are the top experts. Then, Mingyu introduced all 5 of them in detail. Mingyu first introduced the former team leader, a sword wielder who looked like a scholar. His full name was Splendid Magic Pen Lansong Jiang. Because the name was a little long, people were used to calling him Magic Pen. As soon as Magic Pen entered the game, he stayed with Yaoguang. He was one of the founding elders of Yaoguang's sword sect. Wondrous Brush had the nickname Wondrous Brush Scholar in the Alcade sword sect. He was known as the #1 strategist of the Alcade sword sect. Many of the famous battles and activities of the Alcade sword sect, as well as development plans, were all carried out under Wondrous Brush's guidance. In the Alcade sword sect, in terms of prestige, the first would naturally be the sect leader Alcade. The second would probably be Bright Moon, but the third would definitely be Miaobi. In this hidden dungeon, Magic Pen acted as the commander and strategist of the 4 teams. In the process of clearing the dungeon, they discovered countless tricks and solved many difficult problems. If not for Magic Pen, it would have been a question whether the Alcade Sword faction would have been able to clear the dungeon to 60% completion rate. However, for the threshold of 60%, Magic Pen had been delayed for more than half a month and still couldn't figure out where to attack. Therefore, in the face of Yaoguang's suggestion to change the commander, although Magic Pen was somewhat disgusted, he did not object. Magic Pen was not only resourceful, but his strength was also extraordinary. According to Mingyu, Magic Pen's sword element had broken through the threshold of 100,000 quarks sword spirit sword wielder 5 years ago, and now it had reached more than 300,000 quarks. However, Magic Pen had tried almost all the Spirit Sword level tokens that he could find, but he still couldn't find a Spirit Sword level sword lady that could synchronize with him. So he had been stuck at the famous sword level. This was not a rare thing. Countless famous sword level sword bearers were like Magic Pen, stuck at this level. There was no lack of old sword bearers whose sword element had broken through 500,000 quarks and had been stuck at the famous sword level for a lifetime. Although Magic Pen Lansong Jiang couldn't get the favor of the Spirit Sword level sword lady, his famous sword lady was very amazing. It was the famous sword level ranked 15th in the famous sword record, the innate sword lady shadow bearing sword, which was ranked a few ranks higher than the Yu King Gojin sword. Be it in terms of intelligence or strength, he was fully deserving of being the strongest among the 5. Magic Pen Lansong Jiang. Innate Sword Lady Shadow Bearing Sword, Grade 1, Sword Element 320,000 quarks, ranked 21st in the list of famous swords, Virtual List. Mingyu next introduced the bald, strong sword bearer. He looked mighty and majestic, with an extraordinary body shape. His name was also very fitting, called Steel Melon Meat Bullet, or Steel Melon for short. Using Mingyu's words to describe Steel Melon, he was a scoundrel, reckless, easily angered, and calculative. However, he was very loyal to his brothers and friends, and kept his promises. Once, In order to help his friend obtain a famous sword token, he had cleared the same instance more than 300 times for a full half a year. Steel Melon had a mixed reputation in the Yaoguang sword faction. He had many friends, but he also had many enemies who disliked him. However, in terms of strength, whether it was his enemies or friends, they all had to admit that this burly man's strength was quite extraordinary. The sword element in his body had also broken through the limit of the spirit's sword level, reaching 120,000 quarks. In the Yaoguang sword faction, he was a top-notch expert. It should be specially pointed out that Steel Melon's famous sword-level sword lady was not a sword lady from the Huaxia sword manual, but from a Europa sword manual. Its name was Arendet, and it was the sword of Lancelot, one of the legendary 12 Knights of the Round Table. It was ranked 93rd in the list of famous swords. Steel Melon Meat Bullet. Innate Sword Lady Arendet, Grade 1. Sword Element 120,000 quarks. Ranked 193rd in the list of famous swords. Virtual list. The female sword wielder who had been waiting with Steel Melon in the meeting room at the beginning was called Hong Yu. She looked like an ordinary sword wielder with an average appearance, a normal figure, and a somewhat gentle and intellectual temperament. However, she was, in fact, an expert whose strength was second only to Magic Pen. According to Ming Yu's private introduction back then, Hong Yu was a rare player who had entered the game over the age of 25. However, although she was 7 years later than most people, the speed at which her strength improved was very shocking. In 3 months, she had become a treasured sword. In half a year, and in 2 years, she had crossed the threshold of the spirit sword. This year, Hong Yu had just turned 30, but her sword element had already reached 150,000 quarks. Hong Yu is also very famous in the game world. The battle that made her famous was during the opening battle of the Yaoguang sword faction. She had single-handedly held back 10 Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko, and then, with a first Madame Gongsuin sword dance, she had killed all 10 Flood Dragon level Yuan Ko. That's right, Hong Yu and Gahan were both sword masters with outstanding strength. Hong Yu liked Yaoguang very much, and it was because she wanted to pursue Yaoguang that she had joined the Yaoguang sword faction. This was no secret among the disciples of the entire sword faction. It was said that Hong Yu had confessed to Yaoguang more than 50 times, but Yaoguang had rejected her every time. Hong Yu was not stupid. If this time didn't work, she would try again. It was said that Hong Yu had once said that even if Yaoguang got married and had children, she would be the third wheel. What was interesting was that Hong Yu's famous swordswoman was the same as her in-game name. She was also called Hong Yu. She was the legendary first Madame Gongsun, the Grandmaster of Sword Dance in Du Fu's famous poem, watching first Madame Gongsuin's disciple sword dance. She was ranked 81st on the famous swords record. Hong Yu, born swordswoman. Hong Yu, first grade. Sword essence, 150,000 quarks. Ranked 56th on the famous swords virtual ranking. Finally, there was the pair of twin siblings. The older brother was called Yu Sikong, and the younger sister was called Yu Siyu. They were born less than 2 minutes apart. Yu Sikong and Yu Siyu had a telepathic connection since they were young. Their hearts were connected, and they flew together. That's right, they flew together. Legend had it that the twin siblings had decided to abandon the prejudice of the world in real life and be together bravely. Both of them had reached 100 quarks of innate sword essence at the same time. They entered the game at the same time and became ancient, treasured, and famous swords at the same time. Even their growth rate was the same 80,040 quarks of sword essence. Their swordswomen were very rare. Only twins could successfully synchronize and coordinate their swords, dual swords. Sword pairs were very rare and difficult to synchronize and coordinate. Because they were a pair, 2 swordswomen were needed to synchronize and coordinate their swords successfully. However, a pair of swords was actually a sword, and they could only be used when their hearts were in sync. Normally, 2 people could not synchronize their hearts and minds. Only natural twins could achieve this by relying on their innate advantages. Only twins could synchronize and coordinate their swords. As the strongest pair of swords among the famous swords, dual sword were divided into male and female swords. The female sword was called Yang, and it was wielded by Yusikong. The male sword was called Ucu, and it was wielded by Ucu. When the two of them fought alone, their strength was only above average among the famous swords. However, once the two swords worked together, their combat strength would shoot straight to the peak of the famous swords. They could be said to be invincible under the famous swords. Yusikong, born swordswoman, dual swords, Yang, grade 1, sword essence 80,000 quarks, ranked 971 on the list of famous swords. Virtual ranking. Ucu, born swordswoman, dual swords, Yang, grade 1, sword essence 80,000 quarks, ranked 972 on the list of famous swords. Virtual ranking. Ucu, born swordswoman, dual swords, Yang, grade 1, sword essence 80,000 quarks, ranked 972 on the list of famous swords. Virtual ranking. After listening to Mingyu's introduction, Gahan said that it was still a little stressful for Gahan to lead such a pair of powerful teammates. Yes, it would be more troublesome to subdue them. In fact, Gahan felt that it was not how strong the teammates were, but how obedient they were. Chapter 132. In the City of Two Moons, a certain player was fighting the boss Yuan Ko with his party members. Suddenly, a message reached the player's ears. Then, the player's mind wandered and his sword maidens lost their commander. Then, they were beaten up by the boss. "Hey, Passerby, are you crazy? What are you thinking?" Passerby A's party member immediately shouted at Passerby, "Military governor. That military governor." Passerby was very excited. "That military governor has joined our Yaoguang sword faction." What? The players in the same party were all shocked by this news. Then, the artificial sword maidens who had lost their commander were all stunned. This party that could have defeated the boss was instantly wiped out. This scene happened in different places at the same time. This was because all the players in the Yaoguang sword faction received a notification at the same time. The star player, military governor, had joined the Yaoguang sword faction. This news instantly spread from the mouths of the members of the Yaoguang sword faction to the other players. Then, it quickly swept through the entire forum. The Yaoguang sword faction instantly gained a new sense of existence in the eyes of all the players. Their reputation rose by quite a bit. Even if they did not get the first clear in the end, it was still worth it for the Yaoguang sword faction to spend so much money to invite Gahan. At the same time, the news of military governor joining the Yaoguang sword faction also reached the ears of the various sword sections. As an important piece of information, it was handed over to the sect leaders of the various sword sections. Most of the sect leaders did not care about this news. He was just an ancient sword-tier swordsman, an internet celebrity with a short shelf life. Perhaps his ability to clear dungeons was outstanding, but that was all there was to it. It was not worth paying attention to. However, the Nine-State Sword faction and the Hung Mountain Sword faction were very concerned about this. As they were also in the King Arthur's Betrayal dungeon, they naturally knew what it meant for the military governor to join the Yaoguang sword faction. The sect masters of the two sword sects passed down orders to the raid squads under them to speed up the instance dungeon. At the same time, they ordered them to scout out the situation at Yaoguang's sword sect's campsite. A few minutes later, they received news that Yaoguang's sword sect had withdrawn 3 of their raid squads. Only the strongest raid squad was left, and it had entered the instance dungeon 3 minutes ago. System notification. Player military governor, welcome to King Arthur's Betrayal instance dungeon. Quest objective. Find the imprisoned King Arthur and bring him back to Yanjing Base City. System announcement. Main quest has been updated. Quest 1. Search the battlefield. Your team has discovered a high-energy reaction nearby. It seems to be a battle between Yuan Ko and the Swordbearer. Please find and arrive at the quest location within 10 minutes. If the quest is not completed within 10 minutes, the instance dungeon will fail. System notification. Special prompt. If you encounter any wandering Yuan Ko, please kill them immediately. Otherwise, They will issue a warning and attract all the Yuan Ko in the entire stronghold to attack you. Mr. Military Governor, do you have any instructions for us? The steel melon bullet asked as soon as they entered the instance dungeon. It was obvious that he wanted to pick a fight with Gahan. Back then, when Mingyue was not by his side, the steel melon bullet had not been polite to Gahan. Not at all. Gahan wanted to shake his head. I have already said it before. This time's command is still Magic Pen. You guys will continue to carry out the raid in your original way. This time, I will only be a spectator and participant. Before entering the instance dungeon, Gahan had made an agreement with Magic Pen and the others. This was the first time they entered the instance dungeon. Gahan would not be giving any commands. The authority to give commands would still belong to Magic Pen. The reason for this was that Guhan had many considerations. The most important point was that Guhan needed to personally confirm some things that might have been overlooked before. TSK, I thought you had some ability, but it turns out that you are just a piece of trash who can't even fart. Uncle Steel Melon can send your small body flying with a single slash. Steel Melon, shut up. If you say another word of nonsense, I will kick you out of the instance dungeon. Magic Pen's ruthless words made Steel Melon shut his mouth. After lecturing Steel Melon, Magic Pen walked to Gahan's side. Mr. Military Governor, I don't know what you are up to, but since you said that you will listen to my commands from now on, you are my chess piece. Do you understand? Yes. Guhan nodded and did not say another word. This time, he was indeed planning to be an obedient spectator and chess piece throughout the entire process. Very good. Now, everyone choose the famous sword Grade Sword, Lady's Sword Scar. Hold the sword lady in your hand and move quickly in the Sword Master stance. Magic Pen gave the first command. Choosing the famous sword Grade Sword Lady's Sword Master stance meant that the physical attributes of the famous sword Grade Sword Lady would be 100% enhanced to the sword wielder. This way, the sword wielder would be able to move quickly with the speed of the famous sword Grade Sword Lady. Generally speaking, the famous sword Grade Sword Lady could maintain a constant speed of 60 kilometers per hour while moving. Everyone, follow me to the north. Full speed ahead at parking lot P2. Same rules. Do not enter terminal T3. Once Magic Pen gave the command, everyone, including Gahan, sped toward parking lot P2. Gahan's current position was at the entrance of parking lot P4 of Xianying Airport. Parking lot P2 was to the north, and the two parking lots were separated by terminal T3. Exploring the King Arthur's Betrayal Instance dungeon was a very difficult process. The difficulty of exploring the instance dungeon was one of the highest among all the hidden instance dungeons in the past 200 years. For this mission alone, Yao Guang's team failed 5 times before they finally completed it. According to the information given by Yao Guang, Magic Pen and the others could not find the location of the battlefield no matter how hard they tried. This was because Xianying Airport was very big. Even with the physical attributes of a famous sword Grade Sword Lady, it would take around 5 minutes to run from their original location to the battlefield. What was more annoying was that Xianying Airport was a medium-sized stronghold of the Martyr's Palace. There were many Yuan Ko monsters wandering around. During the process of searching, if they were entangled by those Yuan Ko, they would have to waste a lot of time to eliminate those Yuan Ko. That battlefield only lasted for 10 minutes. If they were late by even a second, the entire instance dungeon would be declared a failure. In the end, it was Magic Pen who came up with a solution. He had many loyal but not very strong players form a party to enter the instance dungeon. Then, before entering the instance dungeon, each player was assigned a search area. After entering the instance dungeon, the players all split up to search. If they encountered Yuan Ko, they were not allowed to attack Yuan Ko. Even if they were killed, they were allowed to let Yuan Ko attack them. They only needed to reach their own area as fast as possible and complete the search. With such a desperate search method, after sacrificing more than 40 players for 3 days, they finally found the location of the battlefield. It was in the northwest corner of parking lot P2. The reason why they were not allowed to enter terminal T3 was because there were quite a number of Yuan Ko there. If they were entangled with them, they would waste a lot of time. Hong Yu, who was at the front of the team and acting as a scout, warned, "Captain, Yuan Ko has been spotted ahead. There are 2 targets. Both are Soul-class Yuan Ko Shaolin Temple's Dharma Institute disciples. Sikong, see you. I'll give you 10 seconds to get rid of these 2 Yuan Ko. The rest of you, maintain your current speed and move forward." He had to kill every Yuan Shun he encountered along the way. Otherwise, just like the system notification had said, he would attract a large number of Yuan Shun that he couldn't kill all of. Yes, Yu Sikong and Yu Siyu looked at each other and sped up. Their speed suddenly increased to 80 kilometers per hour. They quickly ran to the front of the team and attacked the 2 Yuan Ko Shaolin Temple disciples. At the same time, the twin swords in the hands of the Yu siblings, the female sword and the male sword, also turned into specks of starlight, materializing into the form of a sword maiden. The pair of sisters, who were not tall but looked very cute, charged toward the 2 pitiful Shaolin disciples. They were a pair of sisters. One had dragon horns on her head and wore a golden dress. The other had wings on her back and was dressed in a red feather dress. The sword mothers of these twin swords were the same as the cicada swords. They were both very rare demon sword mothers. No one knew which one was the older sister and which one was the younger sister. The 2 soul-class Shaolin Temple disciples each used a golden rod. Their eyes were bloodshot. Clearly, they had lost their human intelligence. When they saw the twin swords charging toward them, they did not even consider the difference between their soul-class and fame swords. They swung the long rods in their hands and attacked. Yuan Ko name, Shaolin Temple's Dharma Institute disciple. Level, Soul Class. 2-dimensional world, Eastern Wuxia. Instance Dungeon, Martyr's Palace. Health, 4 stars. Attack, 2 stars. Agility, 2 stars. Demonic power, none. Abilities, a pair of golden rods. This is their only ability to defeat their enemies. It is also their best ability. Ultimate skills, Chi Mei Staff Technique, Coiling Dragon Staff Technique, Shaolin's 18 Bronze Men Formation. Introduction. The core soldiers of the Martyr's Palace come from the Shaolin Temple of the Eastern Wuxia world. They have received careful guidance from the head of the Shaolin Temple's Dharma Institute and are proficient in all kinds of staff techniques and formations. Once 18 of them are gathered, they can use the 18 Bronze Men Formation to fight against famed swords. Coiling Dragon Staff Technique. The 2 Shaolin Temple disciples used their ultimate skills as soon as they met the twin swords. Unfortunately, it was useless. The twin swords' blades curled around the golden rods and pulled hard. The 2 Shaolin Temple disciples' golden rods were removed by the twin swords. This was the twin swords' basic skill. Male and female coil. Consumes 10% of the shield's energy to remove Yuan Ko's weapon and prevent him from picking up again for 5 seconds. The success rate depends on Yuan Ko's level. Without a weapon, the Shaolin Temple disciples' strength dropped by more than half. Without any suspense, they were killed by the twin swords in less than 8 seconds. Chapter 133. The Yu siblings displayed their astonishing strength. Although it was a battle between a famed sword-rank sword lady and a soul-rank Yuanjun, 8 seconds of battle time was a bit too much. Normally, a famed sword-rank sword lady would need around a minute to deal with a soul-rank Yuanjun. The team advanced at a uniform speed past the location of the previous battle, and the Yu siblings just happened to return to the team. "Captain, we've discovered Yuan Ko ahead. There are 6 targets, 4 Viking Berserker warriors, and 2 Indian Grand Shaman sorcerers. All of them are Soul rank Yuan Ko." Not long after, Hong Yu sent another warning. This time, the number of Yuan Ko had reached 6, and they were a team with both melee and range fighters. Steel Centipede. "Hong Yu, you have 20 seconds to get rid of them." This time, Clever Pen assigned Steel Centipede and Hong Yu to each team. Haha. Steel Centipede has been eagerly waiting to make his move. Steel Centipede excitedly howled and threw Arendate towards the positions of the 6 Yuan Ko. Arendate completed his Sword Maiden transformation in midair, transforming into a warrior shrouded in smoke and wearing pitch-black armor. Arondate's armor could be said to be seamless. Apart from the two holes on his helmet, not even a trace of light could shine through. Arondate's entire face was covered by the helmet, making it impossible to see what he looked like. At the same time, the group of Yuan Ko also discovered Arondate. 4 Viking Berserker warriors took the lead, brandishing their giant axes as they charged towards Arondate. These Viking Berserker warriors were the most valiant warriors among the Vikings. They were the elite warriors selected from various tribes, and their muscles and willpower were strengthened using secret techniques. Normally, one of these Berserker warriors could fight against several hundred people. Once they went berserk, their skin would become as hard as steel, and every muscle fiber would become as tough as titanium alloy. With their full strength, they could lift up a truck and use it as a mace. Against such powerful opponents, those below the famed Sword Maiden level, including the majority of famed Sword Maidens, wouldn't dare to face a Viking Berserker warrior head-on. In terms of game data, a direct hit from a Viking Berserker warrior would result in a loss of over 1,000 points of shield energy. How much shield energy could a famed Sword Maiden have? A famed Sword Maiden who was a new famed Sword Maiden would only have over 10,000 points of shield energy. A single strike from a soul-level Yuan Ko, who was 1 level lower than her, would reduce her shield energy by 1/10. That was a truly miserable outcome. Therefore, most famed Sword Maidens wouldn't choose to face a Viking Berserker warrior head-on. In any case, these Berserker warriors didn't have high intelligence, nor did they have sufficient agility. Surrounding them and engaging in guerrilla warfare to slowly whittle down their health was the most correct and safest choice. This was the most effective method to deal with Viking Berserker warriors. However, Arondate didn't care about this so-called method at all. Against the 4 Viking Berserker warriors, the 4 giant axes added up to over 4,000 points of damage. Arondate neither dodged nor evaded, allowing the 4 giant axes to chop down on his armor. Clang! For loud sounds of impact could be heard as the axe struck Arondate's armor, causing sparks to fly. However, Arondate's armor didn't even have a dent in it. The armor's defensive power was astonishing. After the Viking Berserker warriors' attacks, it was Arondate's turn to counterattack. With a sweep of her giant sword, a Viking Berserker warrior's head rolled to the ground. At the same time, a dimensional vortex began to form, and the powerful Viking Berserker warrior died in one strike from Arondate. What a powerful attack! Seeing this scene, Gohan's heart trembled. Although the Viking Berserker warriors sacrificed their defense and HP in exchange for their terrifying attack power, he was still a soul-level Yuan Ko with around 3,000 points of HP. This Arondate had dealt a fatal blow with one strike, beheading the Viking Berserker warrior. From this, it could be seen that her attack power was also extremely extraordinary. In addition to the frightening defense she had displayed just now, Arondate was indeed worthy of being called the best MT in the famed sword grade. Arondate had single-handedly blocked the 4 Viking Berserker warriors. The great Indian shaman behind him naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity to cast spells. Their totem staffs began to flicker with a black light. This was the great Indian shaman's signature skill, Death Assault. Once hit by Death Assault, the target would receive a fixed damage of 1,500 points, and all attributes would decrease by 50% for 5 seconds. This was an extremely powerful skill. It could be said to be the great Indian shaman's ultimate skill. Once hit, Arondate would suffer greatly while blocking the 4 Viking Berserker warriors. Just as the great shaman's spell was about to take form, a bell-like laughter suddenly came from beside them. Hong Yu's crimson voice abruptly appeared beside the 2 shamans. This wasn't Hong Yu the Sword Maiden, but Hong Yu the Sword Wielder. Hong Yu was also a sword master. The 2 shamans turned pale with fright. At this moment, they were unable to use any defensive shaman spells while releasing Death Assault. They gritted their teeth and decided to ignore Hong Yu. They would first release Death Assault and help the Viking Berserker warriors finish off Arondate. But how could Hong Yu let them succeed? Hong Yu's sword suddenly released a pink miasma that rapidly enveloped the 2 shamans. The death assault that was about to be released in a second or two stopped. After another 7 or 8 seconds, the miasma dissipated. The two great shamans had become corpses lying on the ground. The dimensional vortex also gradually began to take shape. No one knew what had happened within the pink miasma, nor how Hong Yu had so quickly killed the two great shamans. Steelworm, I'm done. I'll leave the rest to you. After saying that, Hong Yu began to return to the team. Steelworm chuckled. Soon, there's only one left. While Hong Yu had been fighting the great shamans, Arendate had conveniently finished off 2 more Viking Berserker warriors. Naturally, the last one was even less of a problem. In the blink of an eye, Arendate had finished the job and returned to the team a few seconds later than Hong Yu. This team from the Yaoguang Sword Sect was indeed a top-notch powerhouse among the famed sword rank explorers. Each of them had the ability to instantly kill a soul rank Yuan Ko. It wouldn't be too much of a problem for them to deal with a Flood Dragon or a Dragon rank Yuan Ko. How is it, my dear young military governor? Does our team's strength enter your eyes? Hong Yu asked Gahan through the team channel in a teasing tone after returning to the team. It's all right. It's barely enough. Guhan very honestly expressed his opinion in full detail. What did you say? Guhan's words caused Steelworm's expression to change. He raised his fist and was about to smash Gahan's head. The Yu siblings also had ugly expressions. Hong Yu, who had caused the situation, covered her mouth and couldn't stop snickering. Retract your fist, Steelworm, Clever Pen said coldly. Your strength is to deal with Yuan Ko, not to bully your companions. If you do something like this again, go back and call back the Star Watcher. Humph. Steelworm snorted resentfully and obediently retracted his fist. At the same time, Hong Yu discovered a new enemy. Captain Magic Pen, we've spotted Yuan Yin ahead. There are 4 targets, 4 human temple knights. They are all soul rank Yuan Ko. Hong Yu licked her lips and revealed new targets. Captain, this time it's a little tricky. Let me and the Yu siblings take care of it. The Yu siblings didn't say anything, but they tightened their grip on the dual swords in their hands. This was a sign that they were ready to attack. In previous battles, when facing 4 temple knights, Hong Yu and the Yu siblings had to work together to deal with them. No need. You have already fought. You need a rest now, Clever Pen said coldly. We're not going to fight? Captain, are you going to do it yourself? Hong Yu was stunned. In the past, Clever Pen had never made a move at this step. Don't we have new companions? Mr. Military Governor, I think you are itching for a fight. I'll give you 1 minute, and I'll leave these 4 temple knights to you. Is that okay? Clever Pen turned to Gahan. Hong Yu, the Yu siblings, and Steelworm were stunned when they heard Clever Pen's order. Hong Yu looked at Clever Pen strangely and said, Captain, it's not appropriate to let Mr. Military Governor take action. Mr. Military Governor has only been in the game for less than 2 weeks, and he's already dealing with the Temple Knights. Isn't that, yes, Captain? This piece of trash is going to deal with the Temple Knights. Let alone 1 minute. Even if we give him 10 minutes, oh no, if he can keep his life, that would be Ba. Steelworm also fully expressed his distrust of Gahan. Faced with Hong Yu and Steelworm's doubts, Clever Pen ignored them. Instead, he stared at Gahan and asked, Mr. Military Governor, can I leave these 4 temple knights to you? Okay. Gahan answered straightforwardly. As the saying went, one must be loyal to the king. Since he had promised to do something, he had to do it. Gahan sped up and left the team to deal with the 4 temple knights. Captain, don't you think you're going too far? He's just a newbie. How can he fight 4 temple knights? Yes, that's right. The temple knights are invincible and can heal. Moreover, that pair of annoying hammers. Without Mandarin Duck to remove their hammers, that military governor will never be able to kill a temple knight in his lifetime. The Yu siblings said the same thing at the same time. Their voices overlapped as if they were harmonizing. Hey boss, if you trick him like this, won't he go to the Alcade Light Sect leader and tell on you? Steel Centipede said from Wondrous Brush's point of view. Faced with his subordinates' doubts, Clever Pen did not say a word. There was a strange light in his eyes. Chapter 134. Yuan Ko's team was made up of 4 paladins. Even the Yu siblings, Steelman Meatball, and Hong Yu found it difficult to deal with this team. Logically speaking, this team was not strong in combat, and their attack power was pitifully weak. They did not even have any attack skills. After attacking for a long time, their shield would only lose less than 1,000 points of energy. They were almost no threat at all. However, there were gains and losses. The paladins sacrificed their attack power in exchange for strong defense and healing abilities. Among the few skills that the paladins had, one was to increase their defense, another was to heal, and the last one was an invincibility skill for 20 seconds. That's right, it was an invincibility skill. Even if a spiritual sword rank sword wielder came, they could only stare helplessly at this invincibility skill. Only an immortal sword rank sword wielder or above could possibly break this invincibility skill with an immortal technique attack. In this way, the scene of fighting the 4 paladins became very interesting. If you attacked one paladin, the other 4 paladins would simultaneously use defensive skills on the attack paladin. Then, every 10 seconds, they would continuously heal the paladin. If you attacked for more than 10 minutes, the paladin would probably not even lose a bit of HP. Even if your attack power was overpowered with the healing of 4 healers, you could still take down the paladin's HP. Well, the paladin could just use divine protection and activate an invincibility skill for 10 seconds, and his HP would be successfully restored to full. This was simply outrageous. Therefore, when these 4 paladins came together, any team would have a headache. With enough time, they could slowly wear them down with enough attack power. However, there was only 1 minute, which was extremely difficult. Yao Guang's team used to rely on the dual swords to remove the paladin's hammers. Without weapons, they naturally could not use skills, and then the team would work together to kill these 4 paladins. However, it was extremely rare to find a sword maiden that had the ability to disarm weapons. Moreover, the sword maiden needed to disarm the weapons of 4 Templar Knights at the same time. After the hidden dungeon was cleared and open to all players, the Yuan Shun team, formed by the 4 Templar Knights, tortured the players to the point that they wished they were dead. Their experience was that once they saw the 4 Templar Knights in front of them, they would immediately exit the dungeon and re-enter it, hoping that the 4 Templar Knights would not spawn the next time. Yao Guang's team and the others did not believe that this military governor could coincidentally have a sword maiden that could remove the weapons of 4 people at the same time. In their opinion, this time, the military governor was just trying to look impressive. After a while, he would return and beg the team for help. Unfortunately, these people completely miscalculated. The magic pen gave Guhan a minute, but in less than 30 seconds, Guhan leisurely returned to the team with the Yu King's sword. As the 4 paladins were in a corner, the rest of the team did not clearly see how Guhan killed the 4 paladins. However, there was no doubt that this military governor's strength was at the top of the famed swordsman. He was not weaker than the rest of the team. This guy really has some tricks up his sleeve. Hong Yu laughed softly and muttered to herself. On the other hand, the steel melon flesh bullet was a lot more well-behaved, probably because he had seen Guhan's strength. Humans were like this. They would only fear people who were stronger than them. Everything else was empty. Military governor, your sword maiden is the Yu King's Go Jian sword? The Yu siblings were not curious about Guhan's strength. As the second place on the famed swords leaderboard, they did not care about anyone other than the first place. They were curious about the sword maiden in Guhan's hand. It was actually the Yu King's Go Jian sword that had not appeared in the world for 40 years. Yes, Guhan nodded. Didn't the system say that the drop rate of the Yu King's Go Jian sword's keepsake was set to 0? How did you get it? The Yu siblings were even more curious. It's a secret. Guhan's reply was very straightforward. The Yu siblings wanted to ask more, but the leader, Magic Pen, suddenly said, "We have arrived at the P4 parking lot. Everyone, stay alert. Head to the northwest corner and rescue the Ardwolves." Guhan raised his head. He could vaguely see 2 Yuan Kos fighting each other in the relatively empty northwest corner of the parking lot. System prompt. Quest 1, Battlefield search completed. You have found the location of the battle. Quest updated. System prompt. Quest 2. The side that you want to help has been refreshed. Please decide within 1 minute which Yuan Ko's side you want to help, and help the chosen one kill the opponent. System prompt. Special reminder. The person you choose to help will determine the direction of the dungeon. Please choose carefully. There is nothing much to choose. Just help the Ardwolves. Magic Pen pondered for a moment before adding. The one in blue and white clothes is the Ardwolves. Those words were probably added for Gahan's ears. He was afraid that Gahan would not recognize the Ardwolves. Ardwolves. In history, there were only a few words about the male Yuan Ko. He was a rare Yuan Ko who did not make an enemy of humans and retained his sense of self. It was said that he was once King Arthur's lover in another world. He was active between Yuan Ko and humans and became one of the few friends humans had in Yuan Ko. Later on, for some unknown reason, the Ardwolves disappeared. According to the current storyline, the disappearance of the Ardwolves was likely related to King Arthur's betrayal. The Ardwolves' current situation was very bad. His forehead, arms, legs, chest, and other parts of his body had suffered a lot of injuries. Blood flowed down like a stream. If the bleeding rate continued, the Ardwolves would not live for more than 5 minutes. The Ardwolves' opponent was in a near-perfect state. He was wearing a light blue warrior suit and had a majestic and fierce temperament. He held a gold-engraved spear in his hand and looked like a general or knight from ancient times. When Gahan and the others arrived, the Ardwolves had been forced into a corner by the man in blue. He did not even have a decent weapon in his hand. Oh, to be precise, the weapon in his hand had been cut in half by the man in blue in the battle just now. I won't give up. Ardwolf let out a roar, as if he was cheering for himself in a desperate situation. Then he rushed to the side of a car ruin, pulled down a front balance bar, held it in his hand, and used it as his weapon. You can't beat my gold-engraved spear with this kind of thing, the man in blue said with a frown. How would you know if you don't try? On the surface of the front balance bar in the Ardwolf's hand, a few rays of light with complex and difficult to understand runes suddenly flashed. This was the Ardwolf's skill, enhancement magic. By mastering the materials and composition of the object being enhanced, he could inject his own magic to temporarily enhance it. Simply put, it was to strengthen an ordinary iron rod to the strength of a titanium alloy. The more proficient one was in this skill, the higher the enhancement effect. For example, a magician like the Ardwolves, who specialize in enhancement magic, could strengthen an ordinary iron rod to the same hardness as an ancient swordmistress. This was a very impressive ability. I said it's useless. Unfortunately, the opponent Ardwolves was facing was the dragon-level Yuan Ko. The man in blue leaped high, and the tip of the spear produced a dozen or so flowers. The Ardwolves raised the strengthened front balance bar and tried to block, but the strengthened iron rod was still an iron rod. Under the attack of the gold-engraved spear, the front balance bar finally couldn't hold up after blocking a few times and turned into dust. The Ardwolves was also pushed a few meters away by the huge force of the gold-engraved spear and crashed into the ruins of a car behind him. The entire frame of the car had been fitted with a human shape, which showed how powerful the man in blue was. I'll send you back now, Sid. The man in blue was halfway through his sentence when he suddenly turned around and quickly retreated. A red figure flashed past the position where the man in blue was just now. The sharp blade flashed with a cold light. If it weren't for the man in blue's quick reaction, this blade would probably have pierced into his body. Who are you? Don't interfere with the internal affairs of the Martyr's Palace. After the man in blue regained his footing, a few drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. It was so dangerous just now. If he hadn't reacted in time, he would have lost half his life. Ayaya, how many times has it been? Duke Wei, why are you still saying the same line? Can't you change it to something new? The red figure blocked in front of the Ardwolves. This person was none other than Hong Yu. Her swordmistress was a murderous swordmistress, so her movement speed was the fastest in the team. She took the lead and saved the Ardwolves from danger. You are human sword bearers. Yuan Ko, whom Hong Yu called Duke Wei, shook his gold-engraved spear. Human, it's not too late for you to run now. Duke Wei, Although Hong Yu has asked more than 10 times, Hong Yu still wants to ask you one thing. Are you not a human? The number one hero of the great Ming dynasty, Duke Wei Suda, Great General Su. We descendants may be unfilial, but do you ancestors have to treat us like this? That's right. This Yuan Ko in blue was none other than the number one hero of the great Ming dynasty. He led the army on the northern expedition and overthrew the Yuan dynasty. He was hailed as the number one hero of the Han revival, Duke Wei Suda. However, he was no longer the hero revered by humans, Duke Wei Suda. Instead, he was the dragon-ranked Great General Yuan Ko Suda under the Martyr's Palace. Now, he was humanity's enemy. Chapter 135. We don't deserve to be called humans anymore. Forget it, there's no need to say more. We have no choice. Shuda's words were full of vicissitudes. Since you're here today, then speak under my spear. After saying that, Shuda raised his gun and continued fighting. Hong Yu, I'll leave it to you. I don't want to fight anymore. The sword wielder, Hong Yu, pushed her red jade sword forward, and the sword lady, Hong Yu, transformed into a sword lady and fought with Suda. The sword wielder, Hong Yu, took a dozen steps back and left the battlefield to her sword lady. Suda was a general on the battlefield. Every move he made was focused on being open and wide, and every strike contained boundless power. Sword Mother Hong Yu, on the other hand, was a dancer. Her swordsmanship was beautiful, gentle, and unpredictable. Coupled with her identity as an assassin, her swordsmanship added a bit of sharpness. Between the two, one yin and one yang, one righteous and one evil, they fought back and forth. It was hard to tell who won or lost. Hong Yu, are you going to fight Shuda alone again? Yu Sikong said helplessly through the team communication. Give me the chance to fight occasionally. I haven't fought with Shuda before. No problem. When we enter Terminal T1, I'll leave the Yuan Ko to you and your sister, okay? After Hong Yu said that, Yu Sikong immediately changed her attitude. Don't, big sister Hong Yu. If you don't fight, I'll kill them all by myself. See you, Sikong. Go treat Ardwolf. Steel Centipede, military governor, clean up the scattered Yuan Ko. Don't let them join the battlefield. Magic Pen gave different orders to the other team members who arrived one step after Hong Yu. Gohan was assigned the task of cleaning up the scattered Yuan Ko. There were not many Yuan Ko wandering around parking lot P2, and they were not very strong. Gohan strolled around and killed all of the Yuan Kos. He returned to the vicinity of Hong Yu and Shuda's battlefield. At this time, both sides were heavily injured. According to the team's observations, Sword Maiden Red Jade Shield had less than a third of its energy left. Meanwhile, Su Da's samurai suit had been torn into countless places. There were more than 30 wounds on his body. Although they couldn't see his HP bar, they estimated that he wasn't much better off than Sword Maiden Red Jade. What do you think about Big Sister Hong Yu? Every time he entered, he would grab this Suda and challenge him to a duel. He even insisted on using the Sword Maiden, Hong Yu, to fight him alone. If we attacked together, this Suda would have died long ago. Yu Sikong, who was taking care of the Ardwolf and stopping its bleeding, muttered to herself. It's fine if you're muttering to yourself, but don't do it in the team channel. Don't you know that everyone can hear your muttering? Seeing that Gohan and Steel Centipede had returned, Magic Pen seemed unwilling to let Hong Yu drag on any longer. He directly said to Hong Yu, we don't have time for you to dawdle. Use your ultimate move and end the battle. We still have a lot of things to do. Okay. Although Hong Yu agreed, her expression showed that she was unwilling to end the battle like this. However, this was Magic Pen's order. She couldn't delay the entire team's operation for her own sake. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful woman from the Gongsun family. Her sword dance shocked the world. The spectators were like the mountains in sorrow, and the heavens and earth hung low for a long time. At some point in time, a faintly discernible ballad was suddenly sung in the surroundings of the battlefield using the ancient rhyme of Chu Si. Accompanying this ballad, Sword Lady Hong Yu, who was originally in the middle of battle, suddenly floated into the air. Like the flying goddesses in the Dunhuang murals, she began to dance romantically. This is Du Fu's watching first Madame Gongsuan's disciple dance or dance. Hearing this song, Gohan's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Hong Yu was using her ultimate move. Sword Lady's ultimate move could only be used when the sword mark had reached grade 1, Gong Sun's sword dance. Before coming here, Gohan had already obtained information on Hong Yu. He also knew about Sword Lady Hong Yu's attributes. Gohan thought that he already had a deep understanding of Sword Lady Hong Yu. Unexpectedly, he was still one step behind. This Sword Lady's ultimate move actually had its own sound effect. This was something that Gohan had never expected. "Yeah, are there people from the state of Chu here?" King Yu's voice suddenly rang out in Gohan's head. This was the first time King Yu had spoken since Gohan brought him into the dungeon. "How do you know there are people from the state of Chu here?" Gohan asked in confusion through the sword mark. "It's very simple. Only those people from a state of Chu who have nothing better to do would add the word 11 in every sentence," King Yu said disdainfully. King Yu was the sword of King Go Jian during the Warring States period. As one of the most powerful vassal states in the south of China, the state of Yu fought with the state of Chu and the state of Wu for many years in order to become the hegemon of the south. After the state of Yu perished, King Go Jian's sword was captured by the state of Chu and was buried in the graveyard of the state of Chu. It hadn't seen the light of day for thousands of years, so it naturally didn't have a good impression of the state of Chu. Mocking the people from the state of Chu was reasonable. However, Hong Yu's sword was clearly a famous sword that appeared in the Tang dynasty. How could it be related to the state of Chu from 1,000 years ago? Interesting. Gohan thought silently and asked King Yu, "Do you want to come out?" "No, I won't come out even if I die." Unexpectedly, King Yu, who always hated being bound, actually rejected Gohan's suggestion to turn her into a sword maiden. Back to the main topic, they returned to the battlefield. Suda saw Hong Yu fly into the air and dance, and there were even sound effects around him. He felt that the situation wasn't good, so he didn't hide anymore. He decided to use his most powerful method to end this battle. Suda's golden carving spear stabbed into the ground, sinking more than a meter into the ground, leaving only half of the spear outside. Then, the golden carving spear started to spin crazily, and the entire ground started to shake as if there was an earthquake. "This Suda is going all out." Gohan smiled. Gohan, who had studied Suda's information many times, naturally knew what Suda was going to use next. The ground, which had been shaking all this time, suddenly began to churn like waves. A jade-like black horse, with a golden spear hanging on its head, leaped up from the ground and scurried to Suda's side. Suda elegantly flipped over and sat on this jade crow stallion. This was Suda's ultimate move, Dark Stallion Steps on Snow. Suda summoned the jade Dark Stallion that had galloped with him on the battlefield in the past. As a general that had fought on the battlefield, his combat ability on foot was only a portion of his true strength. Only when he rode on a horse could he display the strength of a general. Suda's strength more than doubled when he rode on the Jade Dark Stallion. What was even more terrifying was that with the Jade Dark Stallion, Suda's battle strength was no longer limited to the ground. The Jade Dark Stallion gave a long whinny. Its two hooves jumped off the ground, and the horse actually took Suda into the air. Suda became one with the horse, his body leaning against the horse's back. The tip of his spear turned and stabbed at the dancing Hong Yu in the air. Hong Yu didn't seem to have time to dodge and was stabbed. Hit! Suda was overjoyed, but he immediately reacted. This was a 100% pure reaction. Suda was really riding on a horse, so he reacted immediately. The red jade that he had stabbed burst like a bubble. Not good, this is an illusion. The Jade Dark Stallion wasn't a Pegasus that could soar in the air at will. It only had astounding leaping power and could jump into the air for a long time. After stabbing Hong Yu to no avail, the Jade Dark Stallion could only fall back to the ground. At the same time, a dozen identical Hong Yu suddenly appeared in the air. Their dance continued, and as the dance continued, more and more Hong Yu appeared in the air. Of these illusions, Only one should be real. Suda pulled on the reins of the horse and circled in place, trying to find the real Hong Yu. But no matter how he observed, he couldn't see anything fishy. At this time, the song, watching first Madame Gongsuan's disciple dance, reached its last line. This old man does not know where he is going, and my feet turn into a cocoon on the barren mountain. It's over. This idiot Suda has died at Big Sister Hong Yu's hands again. Every time, it's the same way. There's no creativity at all. The spectating Yu Sikong sighed and no longer paid attention to the battle. In his view, as long as Hong Yu finished singing, watching first Madame Gongsuan's disciple dance, that Suda was dead for sure. Was that really the case? Of course, that was the case. After the song, watching first Madame Gongsuan's disciple dance was finished, the Hong Yu illusion in the air turned into a total of 50 illusions. At the end of the song, these 50 illusions moved at the same time, and like sharp swords, they stabbed at Suda, who was on the ground. These 50 Hong Yus were filled with murderous intent, and they were like real people without any flaws. Only one of them is real. Don't you dare lie to me. Suda shouted, and raised his golden chisel spear, and danced around his body in a circle, trying to destroy these illusions. Who told you that these are illusions? Hong Yu's faint voice sounded like a ghost, and then the 50 Hong Yu swords in the hands of Hong Yu stabbed into Suda's heart one by one. Once Hong Yu's sword stabbed into Hong Yu's heart, the illusions disappeared without a trace. You are all illusions indeed. After the attack, Suda sneered, and then a large mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. I didn't expect these swords to be real. After saying that, Suda fell from the horse, and a dimensional whirlpool appeared. Suda, the hero of the founding of the country, fell at the hands of Hong Yu's sword. Ultimate skill, Gong Sun's sword dance, consumes 90% of Hong Yu's durability. After 30 seconds of preparation, 50 illusions of Hong Yu's sword can be created. After the chant, attack a random target within a certain range. Each illusion has 100% of Hong Yu's attack power. It can be dodged but cannot be blocked. During the chant, Hong Yu's personal shields will disappear and her body will be invisible. She can be detected by detection skills. Chapter 136. Hong Yu, who had finished off Suda, seemed to be a little depressed. She put sword Maiden Hong Yu back into the scabbard to recover and said, I'm going to guard the surroundings and leave Ardwolf's vicinity. System notification. Quest 2. Assistance completed. You have killed Yuan Ko Shuda. Quest progress. 10%. System notification. Quest 3. Listening and questioning have been refreshed. Listen to what Yuan Ko Ardwolf has to say and ask questions correctly. Please note that asking questions correctly is very important. Otherwise, your quest will fail. There's no need to save me. Ardwolf, who was being treated by the Yu siblings, spat out a mouthful of blood. His voice gradually became intermittent. Before I escaped, filth had already seeped into my heart. I'm about to become the kind of person I hate. Ardwolf's eyes were filled with sadness and despair. It's a pity that I can no longer be a partner of justice. Father, I'm going to find you. Is he dead for sure? Gohan walked to Ardwolf's side and carefully observed his body. He found that there was a black hole where Ardwolf's heart should be. It seemed that something had drilled into the hole. We can't save him. Magic Pen glanced at Gohan. We've tried countless methods before. We've even spent a lot of effort to bring medical pods and nanomedical capsules into this quest. In the end, we still can't save him. His heart has been directly hit by filth. There's no way to save him. Filth was a new term that King Arthur brought to the humans after he defected. It was said that most of the Yuanshan that were born among the humans had their souls contaminated by filth. That was why they attacked humans so crazily and completely gave up on the idea of peaceful coexistence with humans. However, after King Arthur, although humans desperately tried to figure out what filth was, they still could not figure it out. Even a large portion of King Arthur's interview notes were blocked by the Sword Committee and the Council. According to their explanation, this part of the content was not suitable for everyone to see. Unexpectedly, The name of filth was heard again in this new hidden dungeon. Could it be that Sword Maiden Online was planning to expose the truth of filth to mankind? Ardwolf continued, "You must save her now. Her soul has been cleansed. She is my last hope and your last hope. You must find a way to save her so that your world will still have hope. Your world will still have the last hope." Ardwolf uttered a few hopes in a row, as if saving her would allow humans to regain control of the earth. When they first entered the instance dungeon, the members of Yao Guang's sword faction felt their blood racing. Even though they knew that this was just a game, a dusty piece of history from hundreds of years ago, when they heard this hope, they immediately wanted to rush in and rescue her. However, now that they had entered this dungeon more than a dozen times, these people would probably be able to memorize Ardwolf's next lines, and they would not be excited at all. Who is she? Where is she being held? How can we save her? The Yu siblings weakly asked these 3 questions. These were the 3 questions that had to be asked, and they were also the most important questions mentioned in the mission prompt. If they didn't ask these 3 questions, the Ardwolf would only be babbling until the filth flared up and wouldn't reveal any useful information. Of course, in addition to these 3 questions, you could also ask other questions. In the first few instances, Yao Guang's team tried to ask many different questions, but no matter what they asked, Ardwolf's answer was the same. So now, the Yu siblings directly asked the 3 simplest questions that had to be asked. Seeing this, Gahan frowned. When he first saw this dungeon's information, Gahan felt that something was wrong. This Ardwolf's intelligence seemed to be far lower than the NPCs in the previous dungeons. The other NPCs would give different answers according to your questions, but this Ardwolf completely ignored them. This was very strange. This was not an NPC that Sword Maiden Online should have. Hearing the Yu siblings' question, Ardwolf's eyes lit up. He coughed twice and answered. Her name is Artoria Pendragon. Cough, cough. You sword-bearers should be very familiar with her. King Arthur, one of the 10 kings of the Martyr's Palace. His hands are stained with the blood of human sword-bearers. Cough, 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 cough. Even so, you must save her. She is now locked in the underground garage of Terminal T1. It has been transformed into a dimensional altar by the Martyr's Palace. At 8:23 tonight, the altar will open, and Artoria will be escorted back to the Martyr's divine kingdom in the dimensional rift. So before 8:20, you must rescue her from the dimensional altar. Otherwise, everything will be over. After saying this, Ardwolf spat out a mouthful of black blood. It seemed that he really didn't have long to live. What kind of enemies are in the altar? The Yu siblings continued to ask questions according to the routine. Hearing this question, Ardwolf suddenly smiled. A person who was about to die still had such a sincere smile. It was indeed an anomaly. Originally, 3 of the 10 kings were here. Otherwise, how could the people of the Martyr's Palace capture her? But I've already asked that person to lead the 3 kings away. Now, the strongest person in the temple should be the fallen Sword Yuan Ko. If you do your best, you should be able to resist him. The fallen Sword Yuan Ko was equivalent to an advanced spirit sword-level sword-bearers. This Ardwolf made it sound simple. Asking 6 famed sword-level sword-bearers to fight against the fallen Sword Yuan Ko was basically no different from suicide. However, Yao Guang's group couldn't refuse. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to clear this dungeon. Okay, we promise you. The Yu siblings made a promise. Thank you. Ardwolf nodded in relief. Then, he spat out another mouthful of black blood. Upon closer inspection, there were actually some organ residues in the blood. It seemed that Ardwolf's internal organs had been smashed. You can kill me now, Ardwolf suddenly said. I can no longer suppress the filth control over my soul. If you don't want to face the fallen Sword Yuan Ko, then kill me. You must be fast and ruthless. See you do it. Kill him. Magic Pen said emotionally. How many times had they killed Ardwolf? This was the first time they came to this stage, so they were moved by Ardwolf's behavior. Although Ardwolf repeatedly asked them to kill him, he didn't do it in the end. As a result, a tragedy happened. Ardwolf was controlled by the so-called filth and turned into another person. Then, he attacked Magic Pen's team without mercy. This filthy Ardwolf's combat power exploded to a terrifying level. Even Yaoguang's elite sword-level team couldn't hold on for more than 5 minutes. They died one after another and were thrown out of the dungeon. They waited for a full 3 days before entering the dungeon again. From then on, Wondrous Brush didn't hesitate to give the order to kill Ardwolf before he was corrupted. Wait, I still have a question to ask him. Just as Yu Sikong was about to make a move, Gahan suddenly spoke, indicating that he still had questions to ask. It's useless. I've already asked what I need to ask. If you ask any other questions, he won't answer you. Yu Sikong thought that Gahan didn't understand the situation, so he explained. He was telling the truth. They had tried to ask different questions from various aspects, but except for the few questions asked just now, Ardwolf wouldn't care about other questions at all. In the end, Yu Sikong and the others were too lazy to experiment anymore. Did you even ask about the color of his underwear? Guhan suddenly asked in a strange manner. Everyone expressed that although they were unwilling to admit it, they had to admit that they really didn't ask this question. Let him ask, Magic Pen said, but you only have 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, he will be completely filthy. At that time, you will bear the consequences of the dungeon's failure alone. Sure. Gahan squatted down beside Ardwolf and asked very seriously, Why? Why does your altar open at 8:23 p.m.? TSK. What kind of question is this? Steel Mantis, who had been paying attention to this, spat disdainfully. It would be strange if Ardwolf would answer this question. However, what happened next shocked everyone. Ardwolf, who had closed his eyes and was waiting for death, suddenly opened his eyes, stared at Guhan's face, and said word by word, because they have to rush back to watch Happy Goat and Big Wolf, which will be broadcasted at 8:25 p.m. What a pity I won't be able to watch such an interesting and meaningful cartoon anymore. Happy Goat, Pretty Goat, Lazy Goat, Boiling Goat, Happy Goat. Don't underestimate me just because I'm a goat. This Ardwolf actually sang. What the hell was this? Hey, brother. You poked her brother's waist. Brother, have we asked this question before? I don't think so. Yu Sikong shook his head in disbelief. This Ardwolf actually answered a new question under the military governor's question. This military governor really had some skills. This is weird. Steel Mantis muttered with his head lowered. But from then on, his attitude towards Gahan was much better. Magic Pen didn't say anything, but there were many more unpredictable things in his eyes. You can die now. After getting Ardwolf's answer, Gahan didn't ask any other questions. The Yu King's sword directly pierced through Ardwolf's skull, completely cutting off the possibility of him being filthy. But the strange thing was that after Ardwolf died, his corpse was left on the ground. No dimensional vortex appeared beside his corpse to retrieve it. It was unknown whether it was because Ardwolf wasn't infected by filth, or rather, Ardwolf didn't die. Chapter 137. Of course, Ardwolf was as dead as a doornail. This was something they had repeatedly confirmed after a dozen or so dungeons. Thus, Wondrous Pen and the others tacitly agreed that Ardwolf wasn't affected by the filth like the other Yuan Ko. System notification, Quest 3, listen and ask questions completed. Your team has listened to Ardwolf's words and asked the correct questions. Quest progress, 15%. System notification, Quest 4, clear the surface of Terminal T1. The Martyr's Palace has set up a tight defense on the surface of Terminal T1. Please clear the surface of Terminal T1 without alerting the underground parking lot. It's going to be a tough battle. Listen to me. Wondrous Pen pointed in the air, and a blueprint of the surface of Terminal T1 appeared in the air. Xianying Airport's Terminal T1 has a total of 2 floors. According to our previous experience, there are about 30 to 50 Yuan Ko on these 2 floors. There are at least 20 on the first floor and at least 10 on the second floor. All of them are Phantom Yuan Ko and above. As usual, the Yu siblings will be in charge of clearing the second floor of Yuan Ko. I, Military Governor, Steel Centipede, and Hong Yu will be in charge of the first floor. Since this is military governor's first time clearing a dungeon, I'll repeat the operation plan. There are a total of 4 passages leading from the surface to the underground parking lot. We'll clear 3 of them first. One is in the northwest corner, another is in the northeast corner, and the last one is on the 2nd floor. Military Governor, Hong Yu, enter from the entrance near the northwest passage. Clear out the Yuan Ko near the passage immediately. Don't let a single Yuan Ko escape into the basement. Steal Centipede, and I will go in from the northeast corner. Brother and sister of the Yu family, follow the old rules. Go straight to the 2nd floor from the airport runway and guard the elevator. Don't let the quasi-Yuan Gui enter the basement through the elevator, understand? Wondrous Pen gave out all the operation instructions in a clear, simple, and easy-to-understand manner. Next, the team was divided into 3 teams. According to Magic Pen's arrangement, they gradually approached the 3 intersections of Terminal T1. Once all 3 teams were in place, they would rush into Terminal T1. However, there was a small interlude in the middle. As the northwest corner was the closest, Gahan and Hong Yu were the first to arrive at their hiding spots. The rest of the team members were still moving toward their positions. In the end, Gahan said to Hong Yu, "Wait here, I'll look around." Then, he left his hiding spot. Hong Yu was stunned. Then, Hong Yu was a little angry. What did this military governor think the team was? Playing house wine? Why didn't he listen to the command and wandered around casually? He even said that he was observing the environment. Almost every place in this airport had been explored by the team. What else was there to investigate? At that time, Hong Yu wanted to report this news to Wondrous Pen. She knew that Wondrous Pen would never be lenient to those who did not listen to its command. She was very curious. If Wondrous Pen knew that the military governor dared to disobey its orders, what would it do? Would it fight? However, due to some considerations, Hong Yu eventually gave up the idea of reporting to Wondrous Pen. Gahan returned very quickly. When he reappeared beside Hong Yu, Wondrous Pen and Steel Centipede, who were responsible for heading to the northeast corner, had not yet arrived at their positions. "Did you get anything?" Hong Yu looked at Gahan and asked with a faint smile. "Yes." Gahan nodded very seriously. Then, he said to Hong Yu, who wanted to continue asking, "But I can't tell you." Oh my God! This almost made Hong Yu angry. This military governor was too annoying. He deserved to have no friends in his life. "Do it." Wondrous Pen's decisive voice came from the team channel. The 3 teams broke into Terminal T1 from 3 entrances at the same time. There's no Yuan Ko. Guhan and Hong Yu's team rushed directly to the entrance of the basement, but they did not see a single Yuan Ko. Gahan asked himself, "No, there has never been a lack of Yuan Ko guarding this place." Hong Yu's beautiful eyes looked around. "Military governor, go and guard the entrance. I'm afraid there are some people here who can't see the light. Yuan Ko with the ability to go invisible." Gahan seemed to have understood something. There were a total of 2 passageways that led to the basement. One was the stairway, and the other was the elevator. He glanced at the door of the elevator. The elevator was also stopped on the 2nd floor. It seemed that the invisible Yuan Ko would not be able to go down through the elevator. Gahan decisively stood guard at the entrance of the stairway. As expected, when Gahan appeared in this position, he happened to block the path of a certain Yuan Ko. Suddenly, a sharp dagger stabbed out from the void, aiming directly at Gahan's temple. Unfortunately, even an ordinary famed sword wielder could react and deal with this kind of attack, let alone the sword master, Gahan. Gahan leaned back and dodged this fatal attack. At the same time, he swung the Yu King sword in his hand. A figure was directly cut out from the void and fell heavily to the ground. It's the Mountain Elder's assassin. He's only at the ghost level. When Gahan saw the assassin who had been cut out, he wore a headscarf and a black veil over his face. He was dressed in traditional Arabian clothes and was proficient in assassination techniques. So he knew that the assassin came from an assassination organization, the Mountain Elder. The assassination organization, the Mountain Elder's first leader, was called Hua Shan. He sounded like a Chinese, but in reality, he was an Arabian. His real name was Hassan bin Sabah, and he was a real character in history. The Chinese people's understanding of the Mountain Elder was extremely limited, and 90% of it came from the famous novel, The Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, written by the wuxia master Mr. Jin Yong 1,000 years ago. The Persian Ming cult's keepsake, the Holy Flame Medallion, which was no longer passed down, was created by the Mountain Elder. The Mountain Elder was known by everyone in the Arabian world. People did not even dare to say his name, afraid that it would cause trouble. If the Mountain Elder's assassins found out, their entire families would be killed. The leader of the Mountain Elder, Hua Shan, was a well-known scholar and politician. Later, when his kingdom was destroyed, Hua Shan set up an assassination organization in an attempt to achieve his political ambitions through assassination. Because Hua Shan built a strong fortress on Mount Alamut, he and his assassin organization called themselves the Elders of the Mountain. The Mountain Elder's method of training assassins was very special. He first built a large garden in the valley with flowers and trees, which was incomparably beautiful. The palace was splendid and decorated with countless gold and silver treasures. There were pipes everywhere that flowed wine, honey, and milk. The garden was filled with beautiful girls of all races who could sing and dance. A group of young children was raised on the mountain, and they were taught from a young age that if they died for their leader, they could go to heaven. When they reached the age of 20, they would be put in their drinks. While they were unconscious, they would be carried into the garden in groups of 4, 6, or 10. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted in the garden, and all the beautiful girls would serve them gently. These young people enjoyed themselves to the fullest and were extremely comfortable. They believed that they had indeed arrived at the paradise mentioned in the Holy Quran. After a while, they would be drugged and carried out of the garden. When they woke up, they were very disappointed. The Mountain Elder summoned them to see him. These young people had been educated since they were young, and they were convinced that the Mountain Elder was the great prophet mentioned in the Holy Quran. They absolutely worshipped him. The Mountain Elder asked them where they came from, and they all answered that it was paradise. So the Mountain Elder sent them to assassinate, saying that if they did their best for the religion, they could go to heaven after death. In order to return to paradise and enjoy themselves, these young people risked their lives to assassinate. They only wished for an early death, so they were often successful. The Mountain Elder organization continued to exist in the Arab world for more than 200 years. It was not until the Mongols' Western expedition that the entire organization was destroyed. However, the Elders of the Mountain didn't die completely. Some of their members who managed to escape joined forces with some radical sects in the Arab world and developed for another few hundred years. From assassinations, it gradually evolved into terrorist attacks. It was said that a certain Maiden and the organization that spawned after his death, IS, were all members of the Elders of the Mountain and gradually developed. The old man and the mountain assassin, who was knocked out by Guhan, was best at hiding in the dark and suddenly attacking. The power was quite shocking, and it could at least destroy a third of the energy of Guhan's personal shield. But correspondingly, their defense was very weak. They had only taken one attack from King Yu, and half of their waist had been slashed. As long as Guhan followed up with another sword strike, he would be able to kill this arrogant ghost-level Yuan Ko. Military governor, be careful. Get down. Not far away, Hong Yu was also ambushed by an assassin and was fighting with him. However, when Hong Yu was fighting, she anxiously reminded Guhan to be careful and get down. Get down. Guhan was stunned. The assassin who had fallen to the ground suddenly revealed a strange smile. Then, he pulled open his robe, revealing a circle of explosives tied inside. Holy **T. Only then did Guhan understand why Hong Yu told him to lie down, but it was already too late. The explosives exploded in an instant, and Guhan was helpless. With a tremble of his sword chi, a move that required 10,000 sword chi to be used gushed out, forming a shield that blocked the damage from the self-destruction. Fortunately, Guhan now had more than 2,000 sword essence and more than 20,000 sword chi, so he could still use the sword spring. Otherwise, Guhan's personal shield would have been destroyed. Here, wipe your face. Look at your face. It's all black. Hong Yu walked to Gahan's side and placed a handkerchief in Gahan's hands. Gahan did not stand on ceremony and directly used it to wipe his face. He did not know what material this handkerchief was made of, but when it was wiped on his face, it was extremely smooth and soft, and it smelled like a peony. Damn, it's C for explosives. Why would these 14th century assassins have explosives from the 20th century? After Gahan finished wiping his face, he realized that Hong Yu had no intention of taking back the handkerchief, so he put it in his pocket. He looked at the traces of the explosion, and the surrounding walls were all distorted by the explosion. This kind of power was definitely not the power of the black gunpowder of the old man in the mountains era. This should be the result of modern explosives. Is it strange? There's also the old man and the mountain assassin with the RPG launcher, and the Yuanko from the 50th century BC to the 50th century AD in the Martyr's Palace. This was not easy to complain about. Chapter 138. What's that sword energy shield skill you used just now? After the battle ended, Hong Yu, who had finished off her opponent, thought back to the fan-shaped sword energy shield that Gahan had shot out from the tip of his sword when facing the assassin's self-destruct. After finding out that Gahan's sword mistress was Yu Wang, she looked up Yu Wang's information and discovered that there was no such shield skill among Yu Wang's skills. That's a secret. Gahan sheathed Yu Wang's sword. Hong Yu couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Military Governor, Hong Yu, have you cleared the entrance? Clever Pen asked in the party channel. It's been cleared. Hong Yu replied dryly. Clever Pen then ordered, we'll start clearing the Yuan Ko from the two sides to the middle. Finally, we'll meet up in the middle of Terminal T1. Logically speaking, the author could have written 4 or 5 chapters on the process of clearing the first floor. However, he was afraid of getting beaten up, so he simply told everyone about it. Since there were no Flood Dragon level or Dragon level Yuan silhouettes that could match up to famed Sword level Yuan silhouettes, Guhan and Hong Yu swept through the area without any danger or accidents. They successfully met up with Wondrous Pen and Steel Centipede at the agreed location. What surprised Gohan was that Clever Pen and Steel Centipede had arrived earlier than him and Hong Yu. Although Gohan had purposely held back most of his strength, Steel Centipede's errandate was a sword mistress who specialized in defense. Most of the attacking was given to Clever Pen. From this, it could be seen that Clever Pen's sword mistress attack power was above that of Hong Yu and Gahan. The last to arrive at the rendezvous point were the Yu siblings. They directly jumped down from the second floor. Gahan looked at the time. It took them less than 15 minutes to clear the entire surface area. System prompt. Quest 4. Clear the surface area of Terminal T1 completed. Your party has successfully cleared out all the Yuan Ko and ensured that no information was transmitted to the underground parking garage. Quest progress 20%. The main quest has been updated. System prompt. Quest 5. Underground Labyrinth. The underground car park of Terminal T1 has been constructed into a labyrinth. Please enter the labyrinth to reach the dimensional altar. Please pay attention to your time. Wasting too much time in the underground labyrinth may cause negative changes. System notice. Special notice. Please strictly follow the rules of the underground labyrinth. Violators will be severely punished. Had they finally arrived at the underground maze? Hearing the system prompt, Gohan's lips curled up slightly. Looking through the dungeon's information, this underground labyrinth was the part that interested Gahan the most. In terms of mission design, this was a very interesting maze. Captain, which entrance do we go down from this time? When it came to Mission 5, even the usually carefree Gunpiper became cautious. There were a total of 4 entrances to the underground labyrinth. They were the northwest entrance and northeast entrance where Gohan and Wondrous Pen had entered. The elevator on the second floor led directly to the entrance. Lastly, there was an emergency entrance near where Gahan was standing. The reason why the usually carefree Gunpiper had become so cautious was because the 4 entrances represented 4 themes. Entering from different themes would lead to different tests and different beginnings and endings. Even though Gunpiper had come to the entrance of this labyrinth more than 10 times, he could not help but want to cry when he recalled the scene of him being tricked. From Wondrous Pen hesitated for a moment. For him, which entrance to choose was a very difficult matter. Military governor, if there is an examination, what subject are you best at? Wondrous Pen suddenly asked Gahan. Guhan recalled the information about the underground maze for a while, and his heart was clear. He knew why Magic Pen wanted to ask him. I'm more proficient in history and culture, Guhan replied sincerely. History, culture, history, culture, history, culture. Military governor, do you mean the history and culture after or before the apocalypse? Wondrous Pen added, I'm good at both. Gahan continued to answer sincerely. Or rather, there is nothing I am not good at. Hearing Guhan's reply, the others expressed their astonishment. There was actually someone proficient in history and culture nowadays, especially the history and culture from before the Great Calamity. The history and culture from before the Great Calamity had been thoroughly destroyed many times over. That's right, 1,000 years after the apocalypse, the history and culture before the apocalypse no longer existed. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a ridiculous joke as Wang Ungshi cutting his own flesh to feed the eagles. Logically speaking, after the apocalypse, humans did not go extinct to the extent of the Stone Age. On the contrary, human technology was completely preserved. Even now, after 1,000 years, it was still very powerful. For example, quantum transmission, gravitational wave detection, and other black technology had been developed to the stage of civilian use. Logically speaking, the reason why technology could continue smoothly was that a large portion of it was preserved by the elite class with high IQ, wisdom, and knowledge. At the same time, various scientific and technological documents were also preserved. So the question was, since such complex and diverse scientific and technological information had been preserved systematically, why was there no longer any historical and cultural information? A set of 24 histories could be stored in a box. All the historical and cultural books of China could be stored in a 10 EB hard drive. There was almost no difficulty in preserving them. Oh, everyone might not know what 10 EB was. 1,024 megabytes equals 1 gigabyte. 1,024 gigabytes equals 1 terabyte. 1,024 terabytes equals 1 PB. 1024 PB equals 1 EB. So far, the upper limit was stuck at 10 EB. It wasn't that humans couldn't make a more powerful hard drive, but that 1 EB was already enough for humans. Any bigger would be meaningless. There was only one answer, and that was that these historical and cultural information had been destroyed in large quantities by humans, to the extent that these historical and cultural information had been completely cut off. So the question was, why did humans act like idiots and destroy their own history and culture? What was the difference between this and destroying humanity's own heritage? What was the difference between this and cutting off humanity's roots? Who was the hidden mastermind that gave such a stupid order to dig one's own grave? In fact, this person was none other than the great Sword Ancestor calendar, and this matter had become one of the few black spots in the Sword Ancestor's life. Many people who opposed the Sword Ancestor liked to use this point to criticize him. They pointed out that the movement launched by the Sword Ancestor had destroyed the traditional culture of mankind and destroyed the spirit of mankind. He was not a savior of mankind, but an executioner who destroyed mankind. Didn't this argument sound a little familiar? The public intellectuals who accused a certain Taizu of starting a certain revolution all used this argument. However, the reason why Kinzu did this was very different from the Taizu. At that time, the fundamental intention of Kinzu's order was to destroy Yuan Ko, not to destroy humanity itself. In the first 100 years after the apocalypse, there was a theory that became very popular. Because Yuan Ko came from the second dimension, from human history, from movies, from novels, and from anime, there was a saying among the survivors at that time: all Yuan Ko were created by us humans. As long as we destroy the soil in which Yuan Ko exists, then Yuan Ko will collapse on its own. To be more specific, because Yuan Ko was created by humans, then humans could destroy them. The soil in which Yuan Ko exists is the second dimension, so we have to destroy the carrier of the second dimension. be it books, DVDs, data discs, carvings, tapes, videotapes. In short, all the carriers that store these things must be destroyed. Without these carriers, Yuan Co. would lose its own existence and would automatically disappear. The theory was very simple, so simple that it was easy to understand. It was precisely because it was easy to understand that it sounded very reasonable, and it was supported by 95% of the survivors at that time. Therefore, an operation to destroy the carriers of history and culture began. Under the threat of fear and with the support of all humans, all non-technological information that existed around humans was spontaneously destroyed by humans. The fire that burned these carriers lasted for a total of a year. If you did not believe in this theory and dared to collect these books and carriers, then you would be reported by the people around you and be executed in public. This was a cultural extinction that was even more tragic than the burning of books and burying of scholars thousands of years ago. However, after 5 years of this extinction, Yuan Co. was still running around. However, the survivors did not doubt that this theory was wrong. They believed that although these 2D things were extinct from books and carriers, they still existed in the consciousness of humans. It could even be said that what existed in the consciousness was the key. It was precisely because there were all kinds of stories and legends in the human brain that these Yuan Co. appeared. On the contrary, it was meaningless for them to exist in carriers. After all, they were just ink and data. However, humans could destroy books and carriers, but they could not destroy humans themselves. Therefore, everyone came to a new consensus. They would endure for 100 years. During this 100 years, humans born before the apocalypse were absolutely not allowed to tell the humans born after the apocalypse about their past. They would let all their memories disappear along with the first generation of survivors. As a result, humans once again succeeded in blocking the oral transmission of knowledge. They also succeeded in completely wiping out most of the historical and cultural knowledge. Everyone knew the outcome. There were still no traces of Yuan Co. disappearing, but humans had completely lost their own history and culture. Their understanding of Yuan Co. was also completely cut off. When humans finally realized that this was self-destruction, it was already too late. 98% of history and culture had already been obliterated into legends. Although there was still a little bit of consciousness left, they risked their lives to preserve a portion of the information. He had also salvaged some information from some ancient ruins and roughly restored the history and culture of the past to some extent. Unfortunately, the people of the year 3001 would never know that KFC sells fried chicken, Chanel sells handbags, Chidian publishes novels. Kanglin Billows has long seen through everything and wrote the book Sword Maiden to tell the story of Guhan 1,000 years in advance. Chapter 139. Naturally, when Gahan said that he was proficient in history and culture, everyone was stunned. In this day and age, a historian was rarer than a spirit sword wielder. Are you really proficient in history? Magic Pen still asked with uncertainty. I'm only responsible for telling you that I'm proficient in history. As for whether you believe it or not, that's your business. Gohan replied in a very arrogant manner. Magic Pen took a deep look at Gahan and said in a deep voice, "Today, let's go down from the middle." "No way, Captain. Do you really believe that he knows that damn history? Go down from the middle?" Steel Centipede shivered, then immediately ran to Magic Pen's side and whispered, "Captain, don't forget how miserable our ending was the last 2 times we went down from the middle. Don't listen to him. Let's go down from the West Road like last time. We've passed through there several times, so it's not reliable. Don't listen to him, Captain. Although we've succeeded several times on the West Road, the number of failures is far more than the number of successes. In my opinion, if the military governor is really proficient in history and culture, then going down from the middle road is indeed the safest choice. The first time, it was because we got a 0 in the Overwatch game that we had to endure a whole day of pain, despair." After listening to Hong Yu's words, Gahan was a little curious. In the information he got, there was no record of this torture at all. It seemed that Magic Pen and the others who were responsible for the record had ignored this part. What kind of torture did they endure to make people like Hong Yu feel despair? Would it make a rigid person like Magic Pen give up his own principles and erase a certain record? Let's go down. Magic Pen had made up his mind and walked down from the intersection of the middle road. Hong Yu followed closely behind and went down as well. The Yu siblings held each other's hands tightly, closed their eyes, and went down as well. Gohan glanced at Steel Centipede and asked, "You're not going down? Fine, I'll go down." Steel Centipede said this, but his feet were still dragging. Gohan was too lazy to pay attention to him and walked down by himself. Steel Centipede was so angry that he stamped his feet, but he had no choice but to follow. The path to the basement was dark and devoid of light. However, Hong Yu was already prepared. He took out a large flashlight from his dimensional pocket and illuminated the passage. The underground space of Terminal T1 was originally a parking lot for VIPs. It was a place for celebrities, politicians, and officials to park their cars. At the bottom of the stairs, there should be a very wide space, but when Gohan went down the stairs, he found that the parking lot had been transformed beyond recognition. A long tunnel was directly connected to the exit of the stairs. The passageway was extremely sturdy. Gohan used the Yu King sword to slash and realized that he could only leave a shallow mark. He gave up on digging the passageway and could only follow the passageway forward. After walking for a few minutes, they finally reached the end of the seemingly endless tunnel, and an ordinary wooden door appeared in front of them. "Captain, don't open this door. It's not too late to turn back now. Let's take the West Road." Gunpiper tried to persuade Magic Pen one last time. At this juncture, the originally decisive Magic Pen suddenly hesitated, as if it was really considering the problem of turning back. "Make way." Gohan couldn't take it anymore. He pushed aside Gunpiper and Magic Pen, who were blocking in front of him, pushed open the door, and walked in. You. Gunpiper said, "You" 3 times in a row, but he couldn't say the words after that. "Captain, I strongly request that we chase this unreliable man out. Go tell the sect leader, idiot." Hong Yu smiled and followed Gohan into the room. In fact, the moment the door was pushed open, the outcome had already been decided. There was no possibility of going back on his word. With a stiff expression, Magic Pen was the third to enter the room. The others could only helplessly file in and enter the room that made them tremble in fear. Because they had been walking in the dark tunnel, Gohan's vision gradually adapted to the darkness, even with the help of the flashlight. As a result, as soon as he entered the room, he was almost blinded by the glaring fluorescent light. When his eyes finally adapted to the strong light, Gohan found himself in a classroom. There were 8 fluorescent lights hanging neatly on the ceiling of the classroom. No wonder Gohan was almost blinded by the light. And on the wall in the corner of the classroom, there was a black loudspeaker. There were 2 blackboards at the front and back of the classroom. A 5-star red flag hung above the blackboard, and 2 red words were written on both sides of the blackboard. "Study hard" was written on the left, and "Upwards Ho" was written on the right. And above the blackboard at the back, there was a thought-provoking banner. "If you don't do well in the college entrance examination, you'll have to carry bricks until you're old." On the blackboard, there was a countdown written in chalk. 0 days until the college entrance examination. It was Gohan's first time here. Although he already knew what was going on here from the information, he couldn't help but feel a little excited when he saw it with his own eyes. This is the legendary college entrance examination classroom of the 21st century. A sense of ancient history comes rushing at me. Gohan exclaimed. For someone who studied ancient history, it was worth it to be able to see a third-year high school dog's classroom with his own eyes. "Military governor, just you wait. If you screw up this time, when we get out of this damn dungeon, Grandpa will. Steel Centipede's face turned purple. His grandpa pondered for a long time, but he couldn't figure out what he could do to the military governor. This game didn't have a private PK system. "I won't be serving you in this dungeon. Even if Boss Yao Wang chases me out, I won't be serving you." "Shut up, Steel Centipede. Find a place to sit down." Magic Pen didn't let Steel Centipede continue. Instead, he ordered the others to find a place to sit. This is the Shaanxi English listening section of the 2016 Ordinary College Enrollment Test. This section is divided into two sections. Note, when answering the listening section, please write on the test paper now. Before the end of the listening section, you will have 2 minutes to fill in the answers from Chapter 1 to Chapter 15 on the answer sheet. Fill in the answers from Chapter 16 to 20 on the answer sheet. Read each question twice. Now it's time for the listening test. Suddenly, a very magnetic male voice came from the classroom's loudspeaker. He began to read the 2016 listening section. What the hell is this? Are we really going to have the college entrance examination? Hand the test paper to someone else. Fortunately, this magnetic male voice was only able to say the beginning before it was pressed down by someone. Then, an old voice came out of the loudspeaker. Ahem, I'm sorry, I misplaced it. I forgot that in 2020, the college entrance examination will no longer test English. Yes, according to the incomplete historical records, it seems that after 2020, English will not be tested in China's National College Entrance Examination. It seems to be because research found that after graduation, 90% of the graduates who spent 6 years learning English couldn't use it, so English was removed from the National College Entrance Examination. This was a great decision that benefited the Chinese society. Many students were liberated from the painful English cram school. Greetings, human sword-bearers. My name is Liu Ban, the creator of the entire underground labyrinth. Welcome to the underground labyrinth that I designed and built. Hey, aren't you very good at history? Who is Liu Ban? Steel Centipede asked, tapping Gohan's arm. Liu Ban is the first scientist in the world to develop an airplane. He once won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Gohan replied. As soon as Steel Centipede got the answer to the question, he immediately raised his hand and asked, Mr. Liu Ban, have you ever created an airplane and won the Nobel Prize in Physics? After asking, he sneered at Gohan and said, Don't lie to me that I haven't studied. I know there was a saying in the past, an expert makes a car. This Liu Ban is clearly a car maker. You bastard. Who told you that this old man made cars? That brat MOD made them. Liu Ban, who was on the other end of the loudspeaker, was furious at Steel Centipede's words. This kid with a scar on his face is right. This old man has won the Nobel Prize, and I am the first Liu Ban to build an airplane. Liu Ban's answer made Steel Centipede's face turn ashen. Was this military governor really proficient in history? Well, let's get back to business. Since you have entered my underground labyrinth, you must follow my rules in order to pass this labyrinth. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. After saying that, more than 10 holes suddenly opened up on the walls of the classroom. More than 10 machine guns shot out from the holes. There were even a couple of RPGs among them. If they all fired at the same time, Gohan might be able to survive, but the rest of them would be dead for sure. Master Liu Ban, why don't you just kill us? Gohan looked at the machine guns around him and asked curiously. Chapter 140. Why would I want to kill you? Liu Ban retorted. Gohan and the others were speechless. Liu Ban snorted coldly and said, Call Aardwolf over. Although he's from Japan, his courage and fighting spirit are outstanding. Unfortunately, his talent is too poor and he's too stupid. Does he think that he's the only one who's sober? So, Master Liu Ban, you're also sober? Gohan asked. It doesn't matter whether I'm sober or not. What's important is that I just want to do some interesting things in this world. I can't be bothered to deal with the affairs of your future generations and those muddle-headed guys. Although Liu Ban said that he didn't want to ignore it, the loneliness in his words was obvious. Strictly speaking, Gohan and the others could be regarded as Liu Ban's descendants. If not for the fact that they had no other choice, who would be willing to fight with their own descendants? Then, Mr. Liu Ban, what is filth? Gohan asked the question that he wanted to ask the most. Filth. Is it the name Aardwolf gave it? Liu Ban muttered, What is filth? I can't answer you because that filth is hanging on me now. If I answer you, my carefree days will be over. Why do you have so many questions? From now on, I won't answer any of your questions. Ahem. I'll explain the rules of passing through the maze. As you can see, you're now in a classroom of the graduating class of 2016 that I've meticulously restored. So this time, the theme of passing through the maze is the college entrance examination. As soon as Lu Ban's voice fell, 6 cards suddenly appeared in the classroom. Upon closer inspection, they turned out to be the answer cards for the college entrance examination. These 6 answer cards are Chinese, mathematics, geography, history, physics, and politics. Each of the 6 of you can choose one as your subject. After each of you chooses your subject, you will take the corresponding exam. After you pass the exam, the sum of all your scores will be your final college entrance examination results. Actually, Chinese, mathematics, and history are 150 points. Geography, physics, and politics are 100 points. If you meet this score, you'll be able to pass the maze directly. If you meet this score, you'll only need to go through a simple test. If you get 450 points, you'll have to face a slightly more difficult test. If you get 400 points, you'll have to face a very difficult test. If you don't even get 350 points, there's no need to struggle anymore. You'll be sent straight to hell. Seeing this, everyone should understand why Magic Pen repeatedly confirmed with Gahan how his history was. The last time he came here, the Guardian planet in charge of history had scored a 0, causing the entire team to be annihilated and stay in hell for an entire day. Even now, some people would still dream of that terrifying scene. I choose mathematics. Steel Boy was the first to jump out and snatch mathematics. Judging from his impatient attitude, mathematics was probably the only subject he was interested in. TSK. I didn't expect such a burly man with a low IQ to be able to play mathematics. Captain, I got 20 points in mathematics last time. At least I didn't hold everyone back. Good heavens, out of a total of 150 points, he dropped 130 points. Such a guy actually had the nerve to snatch mathematics. However, Magic Pen obviously knew Steel Centipede's situation very well. Steel Centipede could only get a few points in mathematics, but he was basically blind in other subjects. Mathematics was the best choice for him. Okay, mathematics is yours. As soon as Magic Pen's voice fell, the answer sheet representing mathematics floated to Steel Boy's table. Steel Boy quickly covered the answer sheet, as if he was afraid that someone would snatch it from his hands. Captain, I'm still the same. Politics is mine. Hong Yu chose the second subject. It was very strange that Hong Yu would actually choose politics. Thinking about it, it wasn't strange. When women played politics, they could make men want to die. Us siblings will take geography and physics. Yu Sikong also made his choice. Brother, why did we choose geography and physics? Siyu doesn't know physics. Siyu hugged her brother's waist and asked her brother with big, watery eyes. Sister, because physics and geography are both reasonable, they were the best pair of brother and sister in their previous lives. Yu Sikong hugged her sister and answered affectionately. These two people's words made sense, and Guhan couldn't refute them. Then, language is mine. Magic Pen took out one of the remaining 2 answer sheets. The full name of Magic Pen's game was Magic Pen Lansong River. With such a poetic name, he should be good at literature. Magic Pen took language, and the rest of the history was naturally Gahan's. After the 6 people finished choosing, Lu Ban said, I wish you all the best in the Golden Roll and Fail Mount Sun. Hey, Grandpa Lu Ban, you can't use the words Golden Roll and Sun Mountain together. A certain someone didn't even have time to complain because the next moment, a hole suddenly opened under the chairs the 6 of them were sitting on, and all 6 of them fell through the hole. Quack! Finally, someone came to talk to Grandpa Dark Crow. Quack, quack. When Gohan stood up again, he found himself in a room with walls on all sides. There were no windows, but there were 4 doors. Above Gohan's head, a crow was cawing. You're called Dark Crow? Gohan looked at the crow above his head. Why do I feel like you're a wood crow? Can't a wood crow be a dark crow? Foolish humans. The Dark Crow shouted in its broken voice. Listen well, Lord Dark Crow is your question maker. You must answer 10 of Lord Dark Crow's questions correctly to get the full score of 150 points. Please give me the question. Gohan, made an inviting gesture. Quack, quack. First question, multiple choice. In ancient times, there was a comic called That Year, That Rabbit. What is the author of this comic? A. It's a crow. B. It's a rabbit. C. It's an eagle. D. It's a stupid snake. Quack, quack. You have 30 seconds. Once you have the answer, open the door you think is right. Quack, quack. After listening to Dark Crow's words, Gahan noticed that the 4 English letters A, B, C, D were written on the 4 doors of the room. Gahan only needed to open the correct door. What if I open the wrong door? Gahan thought for a moment and asked. Quack, quack. You only have 20 seconds left. Dark Crow's voice made Gahan's ears hurt badly. Gahan didn't ask Dark Crow anymore. He went straight to the door of option D, pushed the door open, and walked in. Boom! After Gahan entered room D, the door behind him slammed shut. Gahan took a closer look and found that this room was almost exactly the same as the original room. There were no changes. At the same time, there were no windows, and there were 4 doors with the words A, B, C, and D written on them. Quack, quack. Congratulations, you got it right. But how do you know that the author is a snake? Dark Crow asked curiously. If I answer this question, can you answer one of mine? Gahan asked. Quack, quack. This question is very serious. Think about it carefully. Quack, quack. Dark Crow pretended to think for a moment, but in fact, it couldn't resist the temptation of curiosity. As long as it doesn't involve an answer, and Dark Crow knows it, Dark Crow will answer you. Then I'll continue with the previous question. What happens if I open the wrong door? In exchange, Gahan asked his own question. Quack, quack. You and the cute Yuan Ko will have a battle of love. Quack, quack. This Dark Crow's mouth was really stinky. The reason is very simple. It's because snakes don't have roots. Gahan said out of the blue. Quack, quack. Although I don't understand what you mean, it sounds very powerful. Dark Crow excitedly flew around, as if he was even happier than if he got it right. The second question is also a multiple-choice question. In ancient times, the apple represented 4 different things that changed the world. Which of the following 4 things is not represented by the apple? A. Newton. B. Mobile phone. C. Apple. D. Small apple. Logically speaking, this question was very difficult. It was really very difficult. Even with Gahan's knowledge reserves, he was still stumped by this question. Apart from option C, the other options were all nonsense. Gahan had heard of Newton before. It was obviously the name of a famous football player who even kicked the earth once. How could it be related to an apple? There was also B. How could a mobile phone be related to an apple? Could it be that a mobile phone could eat an apple? Wait, thinking of a mobile phone eating an apple, Gahan suddenly recalled the mobile phone that he picked up in the Wudong Peak instance. It seemed that there was an apple with a bite on the back of the mobile phone. Bingo! It turned out that this was the foreshadowing. Everything really had its own destiny. He just didn't know what the hell the white mark on the mobile phone was. Apple juice, or a white apple. As a result, Gahan only had to choose between A and D. In the end, under the urging of the Dark Crow, Gahan chose D. Gahan smoothly passed. Quack, quack, why did you choose D? The answer to this question, even Lord Dark Crow himself doesn't know. The Dark Crow continued to fully display its curiosity. Because of the small apple. Chapter 141. Gahan had never thought that he would be able to use all the information he had read in order to study the instance dungeon. The first 7 questions of the history exam, such as who was real, Yiliangshan and Zhaoritian, which was the TV station, CCTV or CCAV, squatting on radish, 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 squatting on radish. Naturally, all 7 doors were opened correctly. Soon, it was the 8th question. Quack. Question 8, multiple choice. In ancient times, there was a mobile game called Warship. Which of the following is its official name? A. Fleet Collection. B. Fleet Collection. C. Fleet Collectin. D. Fleet Relection. It's over. I can't answer this question. Gohan sighed in his heart and raised his hand to protest. Inwu, I protest. This is a history exam, not an English exam. I refuse to answer this question. Objection invalid. The physics exam also needs to calculate the acceleration of gravity. Why don't you say that physics can't include mathematics? What the Dark Crow said made sense, and Gohan couldn't refute it. There was no other way. Since protests were ineffective, he could only use the elimination method. First of all, since the game was called Warship C, then option D should be eliminated. Then there were 3 similar English words. Gohan had learned a lot of things, but he had never learned English. It couldn't be helped. In this day and age, English was already considered a rare language. That was because most of the sword maidens who awakened in the beginning were from Huaxia. Occasionally, it would be very melodramatic. Even if there were non-Chinese sword maidens who awakened, they would still speak in Huaxia. For example, when the sword in the stone awakened, he spoke in Beijing dialect, which shocked a group of British gentlemen so much that they took off their underwear. In addition to Jiandi in the past 1,000 years, 7 out of 10 of them were Chinese. The majority of the council and the sword committee were also Chinese, although the British and Americans strongly opposed it, and there was a certain degree of riot and protest. With Zhetian Jindi's help, the Chinese language became the official language of Earth. Every school and every human in the early stages of growth had to learn Chinese. Later, after a few hundred years of subtle influence, coupled with the fact that Chinese was too easy to use, English gradually weakened and disappeared. In the end, it became one of the 7 endangered minority languages that the council needed to protect. As a result, the council had to spend tens of millions of RMB every year to pay for a group of English-speaking students and professors to prevent English from being lost. The reason why he wrote so much was to tell everyone that it wasn't that Gohan wasn't serious in his studies, but that Gohan hadn't learned English before. There was no other way. The last question could only be answered by guessing. He had to force himself to guess 1 out of the 3 options. Ka, you have 5 seconds left. Do you have an answer? The Dark Crow continued to chatter in Gohan's ear. Got it, Gohan sneered. He walked to the door marked D and pushed it in without hesitation. As he pushed, he explained with a sneer, trying to fool me with such a simple trick? Although there is a C in the title, shouldn't there be a C in the real name? You're insulting my intelligence. Ahem, there's no need for me to say more. Everyone should know the result. Gohan isn't a saint. There's bound to be times when he's stupid. Let's not be too harsh on Gohan. Gohan pushed the door open and was stunned to find himself standing on a roaring sea. It was a roaring sea. There was an island, sunlight, seagulls, coconut trees, and walls. That's right. He was standing on the sea. For some reason, Gohan could actually walk on the waves and step on the water. This was really amazing. What was even more amazing was that this sea actually had a boundary. From afar, Gohan could even see the walls in the distance. This was a sea that was controlled within a large room with a radius of thousands of square meters. I can see the walls, which means this isn't an illusion. Gohan was a little lost. If this was not an illusion created by an illusory skill, but a really man-made indoor sea, this Lu Ban was really boring. Ka. Congratulations, you're wrong. You're about to face the challenge of an entire fleet. Ka. The Dark Crow cackled a few times, then spread its wings and flew away. An entire fleet. Gohan's heart jumped. Could they be here again? Yes, they were here again. On the originally calm sea, a cloud of smoke suddenly appeared out of nowhere, covering most of the sea in the distance. Oh no, this is a destroyer releasing smoke. After the Crusade mission at the Jinyuan garrison residence, Gohan specially went to look up all kinds of information about warships. However, not much information was preserved in real life. Gohan could only learn a thing or two from a game called World of Warship. In World of Warship, the biggest function of destroyers was to release smoke to provide cover for their own warships. If this is the pattern of World of Warship, then the first wave of attack should come from the air. At this thought, Gohan suddenly looked up. Sure enough, he saw 2 pairs of planes flying towards his head. Looking at the bulging bombs on their bellies, these 2 groups of planes should be bombers. However, the strange thing was that these two groups of planes were made of wood. Logically speaking, in the era of bombers, there should be no purely wooden planes. The strangest thing was that these planes were very small. They looked like children's model planes. It was as if someone was controlling these planes remotely. Although these two groups of bombers looked like models, they were very skilled in combat when they attacked. They began to dive, attempting to drop their bombs on Gahan's head. However, there was no way Gahan would let them do as they wished. Gahan first leaped up from the ground and dodged the first wave of the plane's dive. At the same time, the Yu-King sword in Gahan's hand slashed at the sky. Like a skewer of Tonghalu, it skewered a group of 6 planes and sliced them in half. The other group of planes saw that the situation was not good. They did not even drop their bombs and turn around to fly back into the smoke. How could Gahan let them go? He raised the Yu-King sword and was about to chase after them. Fire! Suddenly, the roar of cannons came from behind Gahan. This caught Gahan off guard. He twisted his body in a strange manner in an attempt to dodge the round of cannons. But in the end, 2 of the cannons still hit Gahan. System notification. You have received cannon damage. Shield energy minus 500. System notification. You have received cannon damage. Shield energy minus 534. He did not expect the attack power of the cannons to be so strong. It directly took away a quarter of the energy of Gahan's personal shield. Wasn't this attack power a little too unreasonable? In fact, it was not unreasonable. This dungeon was designed for famed sword-level swordsmen, so the attack power was set according to the strength of a famed sword-level swordsman. And although Gahan held the Yu-King sword and disguised himself as a famed sword-level swordsman, he was actually an ancient sword-level swordsman. His sword element was only around 2,500, which was 4 times the minimum of 10,000 for a famed sword-level swordsman. It was not strange for 2 cannons to take away a quarter of his HP. Forget about the planes. First, get rid of the cannons on the battleship. Gahan made a prompt decision and turned around. He saw the culprits that had just killed him. 2 cruisers were traveling side by side. They were like planes, and they were less than twice the size of Gahan. The entire hull was made of wood, and even the cannon barrels were made of wood. It was hard to believe that Liu Ban, the ancestor of carpentry, could make the wooden cannons fire without burning them. Seeing Gahan charging towards them, the 2 cruisers immediately split into 2 combat units. One headed east, and the other headed west. They were very fast, and they were not much slower than Gahan's full speed. The strategy of these 2 cruisers was very obvious. One would be the bait to attract Gahan's attack, while the other would try to stay as far away from Gahan as possible. It would maintain a safe distance and fire at Gahan. In other words, no matter which battlecruiser Gahan chose to attack, the other battlecruiser would be in a safe environment and attack Gahan without any pressure. Facing this situation, Gahan had to come up with a new strategy. This strategy was also very simple. It was to release a certain guy who had been slacking off. King Yu, come out. Gahan forcefully threw the Yu-King sword in another direction. The Yu-King's sword dissipated in the air before turning into a sword Maiden form. Annoying, despicable person. Didn't I say that I don't want to come out and fight recently? King Yu angrily stood on the surface of the water, causing a huge splash under his feet. Stop messing around. There's no one else here. Gahan said this and ignored King Yu's complaints. He took out the Qingpin sword and charged towards his target. Scoundrel. So embarrassing. King Yu stomped a few more times and obediently charged towards the other cruiser. Before this, the King of Yu was wearing traditional Yu leather armor. Although it wasn't made of much material, it still covered her breasts well. The lower half of her body was also covered above her knees. She also had a pair of arm guards on her arms and a pair of thick leather boots on her feet. Overall, it covered quite well. Only half of her arms, a small area of her abdomen, and a portion of her calves were exposed. It wasn't a very revealing outfit, but the current King Yu was different. The breastplate that originally covered her breasts was only the size of a small mound. The protective wall was still there, but it had become hollow. The shoes were still there, but they had turned into sandals. Most importantly, the lower part of King Yu's body, the armor that was originally even tighter than safety pants, had now turned into a complete underwear. At the edge of the underwear was a series of small tassels that fell down like a curtain, barely covering King Yu's thighs. However, this sense of mystery only made it more obvious, making men's imaginations run wild. No wonder King Yu, who loved freedom, was unwilling to come out in sword maiden form. In his words, "This posture, this king, is too embarrassing." Chapter 142. Although the two cruisers ran very fast, they were quickly caught up by Gahan and the King of Yu. Although the cruiser Gahan was chasing was firing with all its might, because its bow was facing Gahan, only the two turrets at the rear could fire. If it was a sneak attack, it might be able to hit Gahan, but with Gahan's full attention, it was impossible to hit. Gahan dodged all the firepower with a few fancy moves. Then, Qingpin slashed down a few times, and the cruiser sank into the ocean. Gahan got rid of the cruiser, but on the other side, the King of Yu situation wasn't too good. The cruiser hadn't been destroyed yet, but at some point, another warship had appeared and was launching a fierce counterattack against the King of Yu, causing her to be in a sorry state. "It's a battleship." Gahan looked at the battleship that suddenly appeared and immediately made such a judgment. This was because the battleship was too big, at least 3 times bigger than the cruiser from before. 4 triple-mounted cannons fired in unison, causing a dense rain of bullets to fall from the sky. Although the King of Yu had been trained by Gahan, and her swordsmanship was much stronger than when she had just awakened, it was only a bit stronger. It hadn't reached the level of a famous sword maiden. While she was dodging, she was still hit by a cannon. System notification: "Your sword maiden, the King of Yu, has been hit by a cannon. Her shield energy minus 1035. This damage made Gahan even more certain of his guess. It was a battleship, otherwise its attack power wouldn't be so terrifying. "King of Yu, it takes time for the battleship to fire in unison. Hurry up and get rid of the cruiser next to you. I'll deal with this battleship." Gahan ordered the King of Yu through the sword mark. "Okay." The King of Yu was very obedient and immediately chased after the cruiser that wasn't far away. Meanwhile, Gahan ran directly towards the huge battleship. The battleship seemed to have also discovered that it was the target of Gahan. It began to turn around, planning to hide in the smoke that filled the sky. "You want to run after acting cool? You want to run after injuring my sword maiden? Don't even think about it." Gahan immediately quickened his pace, intending to intercept the battleship before it disappeared into the fog. However, halfway through, Gahan suddenly felt alarmed. He, who was originally running, suddenly stopped and quickly leaped backward. In the next second, 6 silver-white water lines streaked past where Gahan was. These were torpedoes. If one hit, it would take away half of Gahan's shield. There are destroyers nearby. Gahan observed his surroundings again. Indeed, he found 2 very short destroyers at the edge of the fog. When they saw that Gahan had discovered them, they immediately accelerated and returned into the fog. Taking advantage of the interruption, the battleship successfully ran back into the fog and disappeared. So that's how it is. 1 aircraft carrier, 1 battleship, 2 cruisers, and 2 destroyers. A very standard aircraft carrier fleet allocation. Gahan could already confirm who his opponents were. "King of Yu, come back." Gahan stuffed the Qingpin sword into the scabbard on his back and ordered the King of Yu. On the other side, the King of Yu finally caught up to the lone cruiser and sent it to the bottom of the sea with a few slashes. This was an interesting scene. 2 people with swords chopped down a few wooden battleships. They even had a hard time. It looked very comical. With Gahan's order, the King of Yu transformed back into his sword form and flew back into Gahan's hand. With the King of Yu's sword in hand, Gahan had enough confidence to fight the remaining 4 battleships in the fog. In the fog, it was a blur. Visibility was less than 10 meters. Gahan could only be careful at all times, in case a torpedo suddenly flew towards his feet from the bottom of the sea or a plane dropped a bomb on his head. However, after moving in the fog for a long time, Gahan did not receive any attacks, nor did he find his opponents. This was very abnormal. These battleships must be secretly planning to attack him. Gahan thought silently. Suddenly, the fog started to dissipate, and the indoor ocean regained its full visibility. However, the remaining aircraft carrier, battleship, and 2 destroyers were nowhere to be seen. Gahan became vigilant. This place was definitely filled with killing intent. Gaga, Gaga. That noisy voice entered Gahan's ears. The dark crow flew back to Gahan's side. Gaga. Young man, let's continue. The dark crow's hoarse voice was about to test Gahan again. Wait. Gahan interrupted the dark crow's question. I answered wrongly just now, so I need to defeat the battleship before I can continue. That's the setting, right? Gaga. That's right, that's the setting. If you answer wrongly, you will receive the corresponding punishment. But the battle isn't over yet. There are still 4 battleships. I haven't destroyed them yet. Logically speaking, if they suddenly stopped fighting halfway, not only would Gahan feel uncomfortable, but the people watching would also feel uncomfortable. Gaga. What a stupid human. Who set the rule that all battleships must be destroyed? You said it crazy. Gaga. 9th question, short answer. May I ask who are the 4 legendary beauties of China? Gaga. You have plenty of time to answer this question. It doesn't matter even if you answer until tomorrow. For beauties? Gahan was stumped once again. This was really a difficult question. Perhaps only a few people in the world knew who the 4 beauties were. In fact, the names of Wang Zhaojun and Jiao Chan of the 4 great beauties had already disappeared from this world. Right, Gahan remembered that in some ancient ruins, a sword-bearer found a composition that seemed to be written by a junior high school student. Although the words had basically disappeared, with the help of advanced technology, a part of the content could still be distinguished. Gahan remembered that the title of this essay was The 4 Beauties of the Horizon Fall in Love with Me. It was a junior high school student's essay. The parse content seemed to be about the 4 beauties of the horizon falling in love with him, and then they lived happily ever after. However, most of the words could not be recovered, but the names of the 4 beauties of the horizon were miraculously recovered. They were Yin Skuan, Zhongzliang, Qiao Ziyu, and Huasua. Could the 4 beauties that the dark crow mentioned be these 4 beauties of the horizon? It was very possible. First, the numbers matched. They were all 4. Then, the horizon sounded like the world was big. Didn't the 4 beauties of the horizon mean the 4 most beautiful women in the world? Of course, the most important thing was that Gahan couldn't think of any other answers. These 4 were the most similar. Whatever, he would choose them. When Gahan opened his mouth and was about to confidently report this answer, he suddenly heard King Yu say in his mind, I remember that Shi Guang is one of the 4 beauties. Shi Guang? Gahan felt that he had heard this name before, but he couldn't remember where. But instinctively, he felt that Shi Guang should be more reliable than these 4 beauties. Thus, Gahan decided to ask King Yu. King Yu, who is this Shi Guang you mentioned? Is she very beautiful? Beautiful. King Yu's tone was very strange. Although I don't want to admit it, beauty isn't enough to describe Shi Guang. I've interacted with her for a period of time. If I had to rank the 4 most beautiful women in China, I think Shi Guang wouldn't be off the list. She's that beautiful. Gahan was stunned. This Shi Guang could make a woman like King Yu admit her beauty in such a sincere and jealous tone. Just how beautiful was this Shi Guang? King Yu, what kind of person is Shi Guang? She's a pitiful person. In order to complete this king's grand plan, she was given as a gift by this king to that little whore, King Wu Fuchai. I feel like I've let her down. In the end, after this king killed King Wu Fuchai, she wanted to escape. I pretended not to see it and let her elope with that disloyal family. Now that I think about it, it's quite a pity. This king didn't even have time to get to her, and all the benefits were taken by that King Wu Fuchai. King Wu Fuchai? You're talking about King Wu Fuchai. Gahan recalled that among the sword ladies, there was also King Wu Fuchai. From a name, It sounded very similar to King Yu's Gojin sword. That's right. I heard that guy is still a sword lady at the treasure sword rank. This king is dying of laughter. He humiliated this king for 10 years, so he should be at the treasure sword rank for 1,000 years. King Yu's words were incoherent and Guhan didn't really understand. However, at the mention of King Wu Fuchai, Gahan thought of something. Legend had it that after King Wu Fuchai was born, the sword lady would urge her sword wielder to snatch the Huan Sha sword every 2 or 3 days. Thinking about it carefully, when the Huan Sha sword filled in its name, it never wrote Huan Sha. Instead, it wrote Shuri Guang. Could Huan Sha be the Shuri Guang that King Yu spoke of? King Yu, let me ask you, is Huan Sha Shuri Guang? Gohan asked anxiously. Huan Sha? Perhaps. When I found her back then, she was washing yar in the river. TSK, TSK. She's so beautiful when she's washing yarn. That little figure is amazing. For some reason, Gohan could hear a thick sense of vulgarity in King Yu's words. The reason why Gohan wanted to confirm that the scrubbing sword belonged to Shur Igwang was that the scrubbing sword, the Yu Maiden sword, the Moon Laurel sword, and the Emperor Invawa sword were collectively known as the 4 most beautiful sword ladies by the sword bearers. It was because the sword ladies of these 4 swords were recognized as the 4 most beautiful sword ladies by their sword bearers. They were Shur Igwang of the Huan Sha sword, Yu Nu Qing of the Yu Nu sword, Chong, Yi of the Moon Laurel sword, and Yua of the Emperor Wa sword. Dark Crow, I have an answer. After a scientific analysis, Gahan confidently gave his answer. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.